On Christmas Eve, I set the table for 5. My children sent a text saying, "Eat alone, old man." They thought I was just a retired engineer with a bad knee and a fading memory. They didn't know I owned the bank that holds their mortgages. By sunrise, they weren't just uninvited. They were homeless. My name is Reggie King, and this is how I fired my own family. Before I tell you how I brought my empire down on their heads, please like and subscribe if you have ever been underestimated by the people you sacrificed everything for. And tell me in the comments, what is the worst holiday excuse you have ever heard? The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 8 times. The sound vibrated through the floorboards of my Chicago brownstone, echoing like a funeral bell in an empty church. It was 8:00 p.m. on Christmas Eve. I sat at the head of a mahogany dining table long enough to land a small aircraft on. In front of me sat a feast that had cost more than my father made in a year of working at the steel mill. A 5-pound Wagyu beef roast sat in the center, cooling rapidly. The fat had begun to congeal, losing that glistening sheen that justified its obscene price tag. To my left, a bowl of truffle mashed potatoes. To my right, glazed carrots and collard greens prepared exactly the way my late wife Beatrice used to make them. And directly in front of my hand stood a bottle of Chateau Margaux, 1982. It was a $2,000 bottle of wine. I had bought it 10 years ago, saving it for a night when the whole family would be together under one roof, laughing and lying to each other about how well we were doing. The table was set for 5. Fine china, crystal glasses, polished silver. But the only thing filling the chairs was silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. I checked my watch. 8:05 p.m. Maybe the traffic on the I-90 was bad. It was snowing after all. A heavy Chicago winter storm was battering the windows. Maybe Marcus had trouble with the starter on his car, though I paid for that car so it should run perfectly. Maybe Nia was running late, closing up her boutique. Maybe Darius was just being Darius, losing track of time. I was lying to myself. I knew I was lying. I had been lying to myself for 5 years, ever since Beatrice passed. My arthritic knees throbbed. I had stood in the kitchen for 6 hours today. I had ignored the burning pain in my lower back to chop vegetables and season meat. I wanted this night to be perfect. I wanted to believe that they still cared. My phone buzzed on the tablecloth. The vibration sounded like a chainsaw in the quiet room. I reached for it with a hand that has seen 72 years of hard labor, from laying concrete foundations to sketching skyscrapers. The screen lit up. It was a notification from the group chat named King Family. My heart jumped. This was it. They were probably just around the corner. They were probably texting to tell me to open the garage door. I unlocked the phone. It was a photo. It wasn't a photo of a traffic jam. It wasn't a photo of a flat tire. It was a selfie. Tiffany, my daughter-in-law, took up most of the frame. She was grinning, her teeth bleached a blinding white, wearing a fur-lined parka that cost more than my first house. Behind her, I saw them. All of them. Marcus, my eldest son, was holding a glass of champagne, his face flushed with liquor. Nia, my daughter, was laughing at something off camera, looking elegant and expensive. Darius, my youngest, was throwing up a peace sign, looking like a fool. They weren't in Chicago. The background showed snow-covered pine trees and a massive log cabin lodge with a fire pit roaring in the distance. The geotag at the top of the photo read Aspen, Colorado. I stared at the image. My thumb hovered over the screen. Aspen. They were 1,000 miles away. Then the text messages started rolling in one after another like punches to the gut. Tiffany wrote, "Merry Christmas from the slopes. We decided to do a last-minute bonding trip. The snow is amazing." I felt a coldness spread from my chest to my fingertips. Last minute. You don't book a luxury lodge in Aspen last minute on Christmas. This had been planned for months. They had planned this while I was asking them what they wanted for dinner. They had planned this while I was ordering the beef. I typed slowly, my fingers stiff. "I thought you were coming for dinner. The food is ready." The 3 dots appeared. Marcus was typing. The message popped up. "Look, Dad, be realistic. Nobody wants to sit in that drafty old house smelling like mothballs and your arthritis cream. It's depressing. We wanted to have actual fun this year. Eat alone. You're used to it." I read the words again. Smell of arthritis cream. Depressing. I didn't reply. I couldn't. The air had left my lungs. Then another bubble appeared. This one was from Darius. "Hey Pops, since you're saving money on hosting us, can you transfer me $5,000? I kinda maxed out the Amex on the lift tickets and Tiff's champagne. Don't be a Scrooge. Love you." He added a praying hands emoji. "Love you." He typed love you while asking for $5,000 seconds after his brother told me I smelled like an old man and should eat alone. I looked up from the phone. I looked at the empty chairs. I looked at the portrait of Beatrice hanging on the wall. Her eyes seemed to be weeping. 5 years ago, when she was dying of cancer in the hospice ward, it was Christmas Eve too. I had called them then. I had begged them to come. Marcus said he had a merger to close. Nia said she couldn't leave her dog alone. Darius didn't even answer. Beatrice died holding my hand, whispering their names. She died waiting for children who were too busy spending the money we gave them. I swore on her grave I would give them one last chance. I swore I would try to be the father they claimed I wasn't. I kept the trust funds open. I paid the credit card bills. I covered the business losses. I bought the houses they lived in under shell companies so they could feel like big shots. I thought love was a safety net. I thought if I caught them every time they fell, they would eventually learn to stand. But they didn't learn to stand. They just learned that I would always be there to catch them. They learned that I was a resource, not a person. To them, I wasn't Reggie King, the man who built half the skyline of this city. I was just the old man, the ATM, the nuisance. Eat alone. The words echoed in my head. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. I picked up the bottle of Chateau Margaux 1982. It was heavy, cold. I walked into the kitchen. The stainless steel sink gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights. I didn't look for a corkscrew. I didn't look for a glass. I smashed the neck of the bottle against the edge of the sink. Glass shattered. Dark red wine exploded, splashing onto my white shirt looking like fresh blood. I poured the rest of the bottle down the drain. $2,000 of vintage wine gurgled away, mixing with the dishwater. It felt good. I grabbed the platter of Wagyu beef. It was still warm. I walked to the back door, opened it, and whistled. The stray dog that lived in the alley, a scruffy thing with one ear, came trotting up. He looked at me with more gratitude in his eyes than my children had shown me in 40 years. "Merry Christmas, boy," I said, dumping the meat onto a clean patch of snow. I went back inside and locked the door. I didn't clean up the broken glass. I didn't put away the food. I left the dining room exactly as it was, a monument to their ingratitude. I walked to the hallway and stood before the heavy oak door that led to the basement. My children hated the basement. They called it my dungeon. They said it was full of junk. Old blueprints, drafting tables, dusty file cabinets. They never went down there. They thought it was beneath them. They were right. It was beneath them, literally and figuratively. I walked down the creaking wooden stairs. The air down here was cool and dry. It smelled of paper and ink, the smell of my life's work. In the corner behind a stack of old Architectural Digest magazines was a wall panel. I pushed it aside. Behind it sat a safe. Not a rinky-dink keypad safe you buy at a hardware store. This was a titanium-reinforced biometric vault installed by a specialist from Zurich. I placed my thumb on the scanner. A green light flashed. The heavy steel door clicked and swung open. Inside there was no jewelry. There was no stack of cash. There was a single thick black binder and a red phone. I took the binder out. On the cover in gold foil were the words, "The Omega Protocol." I opened the binder. The first page was a photograph of the four of us. Me, Marcus, Nia, and Darius, taken 20 years ago. We were smiling. Beatrice was taking the picture. I looked at their young faces. I remembered teaching Marcus to ride a bike. I remembered braiding Nia's hair when Beatrice was working late. I remembered holding Darius when he scraped his knee. I took the photo out of the plastic sleeve. I looked at it for one long second. Then I ripped it in half, then in quarters. I let the pieces fall to the concrete floor. I picked up the red phone. It was a direct line. I only had one number programmed into it. It rang twice. A voice answered. It was gravelly, tired, but sharp. Cohen. My lawyer. My oldest friend. A man who had fought in the trenches of business law with me since we were both hungry and broke in the 70s. Reggie Cohen asked, "It's Christmas Eve. Is everything all right?" "No, Cohen," I said. My voice didn't shake. It was as hard as the steel beams I used to inspect. "Everything is not all right, but it's about to be corrected." There was a pause on the line. Cohen knew me better than anyone. He heard the tone. "Are you sure?" Cohen asked softly. "You know what happens if we do this. There is no going back. This is the nuclear option, Reggie. I looked at the text message on my personal cell phone one last time. Eat alone. I am sure I said. Okay, Cohen sighed. What do you want to execute? I want you to activate the Omega Protocol, I said. Dissolve the blind trust. Revoke the power of attorney. And, Cohen, yeah, Reggie. Draft the eviction notices. I want them served electronically by midnight. I want the locks changed on the company assets by tomorrow morning. Reggie Cohen warned, his voice serious. We are talking about your children. If I push this button, Marcus loses his job. Naya loses her store. Darius loses everything. They will be on the street. It's winter. I know, I said. I looked at the shattered wine bottle in the sink upstairs in my mind's eye. They wanted me to eat alone, Cohen, so I'm going to let them starve alone. Do it. I hung up the phone. The clock upstairs chimed 9:00 p.m. The war had begun, and they were 1,000 miles away drinking champagne, completely unaware that the ground beneath their feet had just been liquidated. I hung up the red phone, and the silence in the basement felt heavier than the concrete slab above my head. The air was cold, recycled, and smelled of old paper and dust, the scent of secrets kept for too long. My thumb was still resting on the receiver, pressing it down hard, as if I were trying to crush the connection between my past and my future. My eyes drifted to the corner of the room where an old dusty cardboard box sat slightly open. A framed photograph stuck out from the top half, covered by a stack of yellowed blueprints. I walked over to it, my footsteps echoing on the cement floor. My knees popped and groaned with every step, a painful reminder of the 72 years I had spent carrying the weight of this family. I pulled the photo out. It was taken 5 years ago. The image was blurry, a candid shot taken by a nurse who had kind eyes and a trembling hand. It was me and Beatrice. We were in a hospice room at St. Luke's. The walls were that sterile, hopeless beige that hospitals use to mask the color of death. Beatrice was lying in the bed, her skin translucent, her beautiful hair gone, her body so small beneath the white sheets that she looked like a child. I was sitting beside her in a plastic chair, holding her hand. I was wearing this same white shirt, though it fit better then. I remembered that night with a clarity that cut like a razor. It was Christmas Eve, just like tonight. The snow was falling outside the hospital window, thick and silent. The doctors had told me it was a matter of hours. The cancer had consumed everything but her spirit, and even that was flickering like a candle in a gale. "Where are they, Reggie?" she had whispered. Her voice was like dry leaves scraping together. I had lied to her. I told her the flights were grounded. I told her the storm was too bad. I told her they were at the airport, sleeping on benches, desperate to get to her. But I knew the truth. I had called Marcus 3 times. He was in Cabo San Lucas. I could hear the ocean and the thumping bass of house music in the background. "Dad," he had shouted over the noise, "tell her I love her, but there are no flights. I'm closing a deal here. I'll be there in 2 days." I called Nia. She was in New York for Fashion Week. She didn't answer, just sent a text. "Can't talk. Runway show starting. Send Mom my love." I didn't even know where Darius was. His phone was disconnected. Beatrice squeezed my hand that night. She knew I was lying. She always knew. She looked at me with eyes that were already seeing another world and made me promise. "Give them time, Reggie," she wheezed. "They are lost. Give them one more chance. Promise me you won't cut them off until you are sure there is no hope." I promised her. I kissed her forehead as she took her last breath. I sat alone in that room for 4 hours until the coroner came, listening to the silence, feeling the hate grow in my stomach like a tumor. That was 5 years ago. I looked at the photo in my hand. 5 years of chances. 5 years of paying their debts. 5 years of bailing them out of jail, out of bad investments, out of their own stupidity. 5 years of hoping that the grief of losing their mother would change them. But tonight they were in Aspen, drinking champagne, laughing, telling me to eat alone. Today was the limit. The statute of limitations on my promise to Beatrice had just expired. I walked back to the desk. The red phone sat there silent and ominous. I picked it up again. Cohen picked up on the first ring. He hadn't gone to sleep. He was waiting. "I am ready," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, devoid of the warmth that usually defined me. It was the voice of the man who fired incompetent contractors, the man who sued corrupt city officials. It was the voice of the architect. Cohen exhaled a long, shaky breath on the other end of the line. "Reggie," he said, his voice cracking with age and concern. I have the file open in front of me. The Omega Protocol. Do you remember when we drafted this 10 years ago? I replied. We drafted it as a failsafe, Cohen said. A nuclear option in case you lost your mind or were being extorted. We never meant to use it against them. They are extorting me, Cohen, I said. They have been extorting me for love, for money, for patience for 40 years, and tonight they declared war. Reggie, listen to me, Cohen pleaded. I am looking at the asset list. If I execute this dissolve order, the blind trust ceases to exist immediately. The ownership of the shell companies reverts to Kingston Holdings. And Kingston Holdings is wholly owned by you. I know how my own company works, Cohen. But do you understand the immediate physical consequences? Cohen asked his lawyer, instincts trying to find a loophole in my anger. Marcus' house in the suburbs. The deed is held by the trust. If the trust dissolves, he is trespassing. The company car he drives, the corporate credit cards, it all shuts down. I stared at the concrete wall. Nia's boutique, Cohen continued, his voice rising. The commercial lease is guaranteed by the trust. The inventory loans are backed by the trust. If I pull the plug, the bank locks the doors tomorrow morning. She will have nothing to sell. She will be bankrupt by noon. Good, I said. And Darius, Cohen whispered. The penthouse. The allowance. The legal retainer that keeps him out of prison for those DUIs. It all goes away. Reggie, if I hit enter, they are not just cut off. By tomorrow morning, they will be homeless. Literally homeless. It is 10 degrees below zero in Chicago. I closed my eyes. I saw the text message again. Eat alone, old man. They are in Aspen, Cohen, I said. They are warm. They have 5-star room service. They have my credit cards. Not for long, Cohen murmured. Execute it, I commanded. Reggie, please, sleep on it. It's Christmas. I looked down at the dusty floor. In the corner next to the safe was a small wooden box. It contained the few toys I had saved from their childhood. A wooden train I carved for Marcus. A dollhouse I built for Nia. A baseball glove I bought for Darius. They hadn't touched those things in 30 years. I didn't sleep on it when I worked double shifts to pay for their private schools, I said, my voice rising, echoing off the cold walls. I didn't sleep on it when I invested every penny I had into land while my friends were buying fancy cars. I didn't sleep on it when I built a legacy so heavy it broke my back. There was silence on the line. They didn't come. Cohen, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. Beatrice is gone, and tonight I realized I have been sitting at a table set for ghosts. I heard the clicking of a keyboard on the other end. It was a slow, deliberate sound. Okay, Reggie, Cohen said softly. I am accessing the mainframe. Authorization code Kingston-1982, I said. The year I bought that bottle of wine. The year I thought we were a family. Access granted, Cohen said. His voice was professional now, detached. Step 1. Dissolution of the blind trust. Executing. I waited. I imagined the digital signals racing through the fiber optic cables buried under the frozen city. I imagined servers in secure rooms blinking, processing the command that would erase my children's entitlement. Done, Cohen said. The assets have reverted. Step 2, I said. Revocation of privileges. Cohen typed. Employment contracts for Marcus King terminated for cause. Embezzlement of company funds for personal travel. Effective immediately. Notification sent to HR and company security. I felt a twinge in my chest, a phantom pain of the father I used to be. But then I remembered Marcus calling me annoying. Continue, I said. Commercial lease guarantee for Nia King revoked, Cohen read. Notice of default sent to the lending bank, triggering immediate foreclosure clause, locks to be changed by property management within 12 hours. And the boy, I said. Credit facility for Darius King suspended, Cohen said. Vehicle repossession order issued to private security firm. Lease on Penthouse 4B terminated, notice to vacate issued. It is done, Cohen said. The screen shows all systems red. The accounts are frozen, the cards are declined, the legal notices have been sent to their emails and their phones. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. What about the service, I asked. I am sending the electronic service of process now, Cohen said. They will get a notification. A priority alert. It will look like a Christmas greeting until they open it. Send it, I said. Sent. I stood there in the basement, the phone still to my ear. It was done. The bridges were burned. The safety net was gone. Cohen cleared his throat. Reggie. Yes, Cohen. What do you want to do about the house? Which house? I asked. The one you are standing in, Cohen said. The family home. The trust held the title to that too. It is now yours, free and clear. But the deed has a clause. I knew the clause. I had written it. Sell it, I said. Reggie, sell it, Cohen. I want it on the market tonight. I want a sold sign on the lawn before they get back from Aspen. I don't want them to have a doorstep to cry on. You really are the architect, aren't you? Cohen said, a mix of fear and admiration in his voice. You deconstruct as well as you build. I am just cleaning up the job site, Cohen. Merry Christmas. I hung up the phone. I walked over to the corner and picked up the photo of the family I had thrown there earlier. The glass was cracked, the frame was bent. I didn't try to fix it. I didn't try to wipe the dust off. I walked over to the metal trash can I used for shredding documents. I dropped the photo inside, then I reached into my pocket, pulled out a book of matches and struck one. The flame flared up bright and hot, illuminating the dark corners of the basement. I watched it burn down toward my fingertips. For 40 years I had kept them warm. I had set myself on fire to keep them warm. I dropped the match into the can. The paper caught instantly. The faces of my smiling children curled and blackened, turning into ash and smoke. I watched it burn until there was nothing left but gray dust. I turned around and walked up the stairs, leaving the basement door open behind me. I went back to the dining room. The food was cold. The smell of the spilled wine was pungent and sour. My phone buzzed again. It was a notification from my bank app. Transaction declined. Darius King, Aspen Ski Resort, $5 $200. Then another. Transaction declined. Marcus King, the Alpine Bar, $850. And another. Transaction declined. Naya King, Lux Spa Aspen, $1 $200. I picked up the phone. I didn't unlock it. I just watched the notifications roll in, one after another, a cascade of rejection. They were finding out. The panic was starting. The embarrassment. The realization that the plastic cards in their pockets were just worthless pieces of plastic. I walked to the window and looked out at the snowstorm burying Chicago. The streetlights flickered. Somewhere in Aspen, the music had just stopped. I poured myself a glass of tap water. I raised it to the empty room. To family, I whispered. And then I took a sip, and for the first time in 5 years, the water didn't taste like bitterness. It tasted like freedom. I walked up the stairs from the basement, leaving the smell of smoke and burnt memories behind me. My knees cracked with every step, a rhythm of old bones that my son Marcus always mocked. He liked to say that I moved like a tortoise. He liked to say that the world belonged to the fast, to the hungry, to the young. I entered my study on the second floor. It was the only room in the house that had been renovated in the last 20 years. To my children, it was just a dusty library where the old man read his newspapers and fell asleep in his leather chair. They never looked closely at the computer setup on the desk. They never noticed the dedicated fiber optic line hardwired into the wall. They saw what they wanted to see, a relic. I sat down in the chair. It groaned under my weight. I woke up the computer. The screens hummed to life, casting a cold blue light over my face. Marcus, my firstborn, the boy who used to sit on my lap and watch me draw blueprints for hours. Now he was Marcus King, the CEO of MK Capital. He walked around Chicago in $3,000 custom suits, giving interviews to business magazines about being a self-made man. He told everyone he built his investment firm from the ground up with nothing but grit and genius. He believed his own lie. That was the tragedy of it. He actually believed he was a genius. He didn't know the truth. He didn't know that MK Capital was a subsidiary. He didn't know that 80% of the assets under his management came from one silent investor. He didn't know that the board of directors answered to a single holding company, Kingston Holdings. And he certainly didn't know that the chairman of the board of Kingston Holdings was the old man he had just left to eat alone on Christmas Eve. I typed in my secure credentials. The screen shifted. The interface changed from a standard desktop to the administrative command center of the holding company. Welcome, Mr. Chairman. I navigated to the personnel files. I pulled up the file for Marcus King, CEO. I looked at his corporate credit card statement. It updated in real time. There it was, the evidence of his genius. The Aspen trip wasn't just a family betrayal. It was corporate theft. I scrolled through the transactions. 5 first-class tickets to Colorado. Charged to the company account under client development. The rental of the private lodge. $20,000. Charged to the company account under venue hire. The champagne, the caviar, the lift tickets, even the damn ski rentals. All of it was categorized as business expenses. He was stealing from me to spit in my face. I sat back staring at the numbers. I remembered when Marcus was 10 years old. He had stolen a candy bar from the corner store. I marched him back, made him apologize to the owner and pay for it with his allowance. He had cried then. He had learned shame. Somewhere along the way, between the private schools I paid for and the Ivy League degree I bought, he had lost that shame. He had decided that the rules were for other people. He had decided that because he was a king, he was entitled to the kingdom. But he forgot that the king is the one who wears the crown. And tonight, the king was in a bad mood. I opened the executive action menu. My finger hovered over the mouse. This was my son. This was the boy I named after my own father. If I did this, I wasn't just firing him. I was destroying his career. Embezzlement is a permanent stain. He would never work in finance again. He would be toxic. Then I looked at the phone on my desk. The notification from the group chat was still there. Eat alone. I clicked. Terminate employment. Cause gross misconduct and embezzlement. A dialog box popped up. Are you sure? I clicked yes. Another box. Execute immediate lockout. I clicked yes. The system began to process. It was swift and silent. At this very moment, 4 states away in a server farm in Virginia, the digital identity of Marcus King was being erased. His company email was being deactivated. His access to the company's servers was being revoked. His keycard for the office building in downtown Chicago was being deauthorized. And the corporate credit card in his wallet, the black card he loved to flash at bartenders to impress his wife, was being turned into a useless piece of plastic. I watched the status bar load. 100%. Status terminated. It was done. My son was unemployed. He just didn't know it yet. I closed the file. I leaned back and closed my eyes, listening to the wind howl outside. The snow was piling up against the window pane. Suddenly, my personal cell phone rang. The ringtone was shrill and demanding. I looked at the screen. Tiffany, my daughter-in-law, the woman who had convinced Marcus that his family wasn't good enough, the woman who refused to let my grandchildren call me grandpa because she said it sounded too lower class. She preferred, Reginald said with a sneer. I swiped to answer. Reggie, she screamed. Her voice was slurred, thick with expensive vodka and unearned arrogance. The background noise was deafening. House music, laughter, the sound of people having the time of their lives on my dime. Hello, Tiffany, I said calmly. Don't you? Hello, Tiffany, me, you miserable old man, she yelled. I just saw the notification. Did you cancel the cards? Marcus is trying to pay for bottle service and the card is declining? You better fix this right now. She didn't know. She thought it was just a glitch. She thought I had forgotten to pay a bill. She had no idea the earth had already opened up beneath her feet. I didn't cancel anything, Tiffany, I said. I'm just sitting here eating my dinner. Don't lie to me, she screeched. God, you are so useless. We try to have one nice holiday, one break from your depressing energy, and you have to ruin it with your incompetence. She took a breath, or maybe a drink. I could hear Marcus in the background yelling at a waiter demanding to speak to a manager. Listen to me closely, Reggie, Tiffany hissed. The venom in her voice was palpable. We are done with this. We are done with you. Marcus and I talked. When we get back to Chicago tomorrow, things are changing. Oh, I asked. Yes, oh, she mocked. We are putting you in Sun Valley. You know the place, the nursing home on the outskirts. We already have the brochures. It's perfect for you. They have nurses who can deal with your senility. I am not senile, Tiffany. You are whatever we say you are. She laughed a cruel, sharp sound. And that house, that drafty, ugly piece of junk you live in, we are selling it. We are selling it for the land value. Marcus says the market is hot. We are going to cash out, put you in a home, and finally get the inheritance we deserve while we are still young enough to enjoy it. I gripped the phone. My knuckles turned white. They had been planning this. While I was buying the beef, while I was polishing the silver, they were planning to lock me away and sell the roof over my head. So fix the damn credit card, Reggie, Tiffany shouted. Or I swear to God I will have the orderlies come pick you up in a van before New Year's Eve. Do you hear me? I heard her. I heard her loud and clear. I looked at the computer screen. The words, Status terminated glowed in red letters next to her husband's name. She didn't know that the corporate jet they flew in on was scheduled to be repossessed in the morning. She didn't know that the penthouse they lived in was owned by the company I just fired her husband from. She didn't know that she was threatening the man who held the deed to her entire existence. "I hear you, Tiffany," I said. My voice was low, steady. The voice of a structural engineer who knows exactly how much pressure a beam can take before it snaps. "Good," she sneered. "Now call the bank. We have a party to finish." She hung up on me. I put the phone down on the desk. The silence returned to the room, but it felt different now. It wasn't lonely anymore. It was charged. It was the silence before the dynamite blows. Sun Valley Nursing Home. That was their plan. To discard me like a broken tool. I looked at the computer again. I opened a new window. I navigated to the legal department files. I pulled up the deed to the mansion Marcus and Tiffany lived in. It was a beautiful house in the suburbs. 6 bedrooms, a pool, a wine cellar. I had bought it 5 years ago through Kingston Holdings. I let them live there rent-free. I told them it was a tax write-off for the company. They never asked questions. They just moved in and changed the locks. I clicked on the Property Management tab. Notice to vacate. Reason termination of employment. Loss of corporate housing privileges. Timeline immediate. I filled in the fields. I attached the termination letter I had just generated for Marcus. I looked at the clock. It was almost midnight in Chicago. If I sent this now, the process server would be at their front door at 8:00 a.m. tomorrow morning. They wouldn't even be back from Aspen yet. They would come home to changed locks and security guards on the lawn. I thought about Tiffany's voice. "You are whatever we say you are." I clicked send. The email whooshed away. I stood up from the desk. My legs felt stronger. The pain in my back had faded into a dull throb. Adrenaline is a powerful drug. I walked to the window and looked out at the storm. The snow was burying the street, erasing the footprints, covering the world in a clean white sheet. They wanted to sell my house. They wanted to put me away. They were about to find out that you don't evict the landlord. I turned off the lights in the study. I walked out into the hallway. 1 down, 2 to go. I headed toward the stairs. Naya was next. My daughter. The fashionista, the entrepreneur, the girl who thought she was running a business empire when all she was really doing was playing dress-up with my money. It was time to close up shop. I walked down the hall to the guest bedroom that I had converted into a secondary office years ago. This was where I kept the files that didn't fit in the main study. Specifically, the files related to my daughter, Nia. Nia liked to call herself a serial entrepreneur. Her Instagram bio read founder, CEO, visionary. She posted photos of herself at fashion weeks in Paris and Milan, holding champagne flutes, wearing sunglasses indoors. To the world, she was Nia King, the owner of Luxe Noir, a chain of high-end boutiques that were supposedly revolutionizing the Chicago fashion scene. To me, she was a financial black hole. I sat down at the small desk and pulled a thick red accordion folder from the drawer. It was heavy. It felt like carrying a brick. I opened it and the paperwork spilled out like a confession. For 10 years, Nia had been running a business model that consisted entirely of buying high and selling low. She rented retail spaces in the most expensive districts. She hired staff she couldn't afford. She bought inventory that no one wanted. Every time she hit a wall, every time a supplier threatened to sue or a landlord threatened eviction, a mysterious angel investor would swoop in, a company called Apex Ventures. Naya loved Apex Ventures. She bragged about them to her friends. She told everyone that Apex saw her potential. She told everyone that Apex understood her vision. She didn't know that Apex Ventures was a shell company registered in Delaware. She didn't know that the sole signatory for Apex Ventures was her father, the man she just told to eat alone on Christmas. I flipped through the promissory notes. Loan. $300,000 for the initial build-out of the flagship store. Status defaulted. Refinanced by Apex. Loan 2. $200,000 for the spring collection that never sold. Status defaulted. Interest capitalized by Apex. Loan 3. $500,000 for the expansion into Miami, a store that stayed open for 3 months before closing due to mismanagement. Status total loss. Absorbed by Apex. I looked at the bottom line. The total principal amount Nia owed to Apex Ventures, and by extension to me, was $1.5 million. She hadn't made a payment in 4 years. Not one dime. She treated the loans like grants. She treated the debt like a donation. My phone buzzed again. Another message in the King family group chat. I picked it up. It was Nia. Dad, don't be stingy about the house. Marcus is right. The market is peaking. Sell it. But honestly, the split needs to be fair. I need 40%. I have a liquidity crunch with the new line launching and I need to expand the branches. 40% is fair considering I'm the only one building a legacy here. I stared at the screen. Building a legacy. She was building a mountain of debt on a foundation of my money, and now she wanted to sell the roof over my head to dig the hole deeper. Liquidity crunch. That was her favorite phrase. It was code for I spent all the revenue on first-class flights and designer handbags. I looked at the loan agreement in front of me. It was a standard commercial contract drafted by Cohen. But Cohen, being the paranoid genius that he was, had inserted a special clause in the addendum. Clause 14B, the Character and Conduct Clause. It stated that the lender Apex Ventures reserved the right to call the loan in full immediately and without grace period if the borrower engaged in conduct that was deemed disrespectful, disparaging, or harmful to the personal or professional reputation of the lender or the lender's agents. Since I was the lender and she had just disparaged me in writing to the entire family, the clause was active. And there was another document. The collateral agreement. Nia didn't own her stores, she leased them. But to secure the loans from Apex, she had put up the only asset she actually owned. Her house, a brownstone in Lincoln Park that I had gifted her the down payment for 10 years ago. She had signed the deed over as collateral. She probably didn't even read the paperwork. She just signed where the angel investor told her to sign so she could get the check. I picked up the red phone again. Cohen, I said. I am here, Reggie. Pull the file on Nia King. Apex Ventures versus Lux Noir. I have it, Cohen said. She just demanded 40% of my home, I said. She wants to expand. Expand what? Cohen asked dryly. Her debt ceiling. She triggered Clause 14B, I said. The disparagement clause, Cohen noted. You want to call the note, I want to call it all, Cohen. The principal, the interest, the penalties. I want immediate repayment of the $1.5 million. She doesn't have it, Reggie Cohen said. You know she doesn't have it. Her business account is overdrawn. I saw the alert this morning. Then execute the collateral seizure, I said. The house, Cohen asked. The house, I confirmed. And Cohen, yes, the inventory. The stores. Everything inside them belongs to Apex Ventures until the debt is paid. I want you to file an emergency injunction to padlock the commercial locations. Tonight. On Christmas Eve, Cohen asked. Especially on Christmas Eve, I said. I want the locks changed before the holiday sales start tomorrow. I don't want her selling a single scarf that belongs to me. Reggie Cohen said, his voice hesitant. If we lock the stores tomorrow, she misses the biggest revenue day of the year. It will kill the brand. The business will be dead by New Year's. The business has been dead for 10 years, Cohen, I said. I have just been paying for the funeral expenses. It is time to bury the corpse. Understood, Cohen said. I am filing the petition with the emergency duty judge now. We have a standing relationship. The writs of attachment will be issued within the hour. What about her house, I asked. The foreclosure notice will be posted on her door tomorrow morning, Cohen said. She has 30 days to cure the default, which means she has 30 days to find $1.5 million. She won't find it, I said. No, Cohen agreed. She won't. Do it. I hung up. I looked at the text message again. 40%. I typed a reply. I didn't send it, I just typed it to see how it looked. 40% of 0 is 0, Nia. I deleted the text. I didn't want to warn her. I wanted her to find out when she tried to unlock her store tomorrow morning and her key didn't work. I wanted her to find out when the security guard handed her a court order instead of a coffee. I sat in the guest room surrounded by the paperwork of my daughter's failures. I remembered when she opened her first store. She was 25. She looked so proud. I cut the ribbon. She hugged me and said, I did it, Daddy. I hadn't had the heart to tell her then that I had secretly bought the first $10,000 worth of merchandise just so her opening day wouldn't be a flop. I had hired actors to come in and shop so she would feel successful. I had created a fantasy world for her because I couldn't bear to see her fail. And in doing so, I had created a monster who thought she was entitled to my blood. I closed the red folder. I walked over to the window. The snow was falling harder now, a white curtain closing on the world. Nia was in Aspen, probably wearing a $3,000 ski suit I paid for drinking champagne. I paid for complaining to her brothers about how cheap I was. Tomorrow morning she would wake up and check her sales figures. She would expect a Christmas miracle. Instead, she was going to get a lesson in economics, asset forfeiture, liquidation, bankruptcy. I walked out of the room and shut the door. I didn't lock it. There was nothing in there worth stealing anymore. Just paper ghosts of a dream that never really existed. 2 down, 1 to go. I looked toward the living room. The large flat-screen television was mounted on the wall. I rarely turned it on, but tonight I needed to see something. Darius. My baby boy. The one Beatrice spoiled the most. The one who had never worked a day in his life. I walked into the living room and picked up the remote. I navigated to the social media app on the smart TV. I searched for his handle. King Darius VIP. He was live. The screen filled with his face. He was holding a bottle of vodka swaying back and forth. The music was loud. He was in the lodge in Aspen. "Yo, what is up, everybody?" Darius shouted at the camera. "We are live from Aspen. Living that king life. You know how we do. Big money, big moves." He turned the camera to show Marcus and Nia in the background. They waved, looking bored and wealthy. "Shout out to the haters," Darius yelled. "Shout out to everyone stuck in their boring lives while we out here on the mountain." He laughed. It was a cruel, empty sound. I watched him preen. I watched him boast. I watched him claim to be a king. He didn't know he was just a jester dancing on a trapdoor. And I had my hand on the lever. I sat down on the sofa. I put the remote down next to me. It was time to take away his toys. I sat on the vintage leather sofa in my living room, the only piece of furniture in the house that Darius hadn't called garbage. The large television screen mounted above the fireplace flickered with the manic energy of a live broadcast. I held the remote in one hand and my secure tablet in the other. On the screen was my youngest son, Darius, 35 years old, and he had never held a job for longer than 3 months. He was currently broadcasting to 12,000 followers on social media under the handle King Darius. The video feed was shaky and loud. He was in the VIP section of a club in Aspen. The bass was thumping so hard it distorted the microphone on his phone. He was wearing a designer hoodie that cost $600 and holding a bottle of vodka that cost 10 times that. He looked sweaty, manic, and completely full of himself. "Yo, what is good, everybody?" Darius shouted into the camera, his eyes glazed over. "We are live from the top of the world, baby. The King family taking over Aspen. Look at this spread." He panned the camera around. I saw trays of seafood towers, sparklers flaring out of champagne bottles, and a group of hangers-on people I didn't know drinking my liquor and laughing at my son's jokes. They weren't his friends. They were parasites feeding on a host I had kept fat and happy for too long. Darius turned the camera back to himself. He leaned in close, his face filling the frame. "I gotta give a shout out to the haters," he slurred. "And yeah, I mean my pop's back in Chicago. Old man stayed home 'cause he wanted to save money on heating bills probably." He grinned, showing off his veneered teeth. "Man is sitting in this dark right now counting pennies while we are out here making it rain. Don't be like him, y'all. Live your life. Spend that money. You can't take it with you, right?" I watched him laugh at me. He was right about one thing. I was sitting in the dark, but I wasn't counting pennies. I was counting the seconds until his reality shattered. I looked down at my tablet. I had the asset management portal open. Darius thought he was rich. He thought he was independent. He drove a Porsche 911 GT3 that he affectionately called the Beast. He lived in a penthouse apartment on the 42nd floor of the Spire overlooking the lake. He bragged about his investments and his crypto portfolio. It was all smoke and mirrors. I had set up the King Family Trust 10 years ago. Every asset Darius used was titled to that trust. The Porsche wasn't his. It belonged to the trust. The penthouse wasn't his. The lease was held by the trust. The black Amex Platinum card he was currently waving around like a magic wand was issued to the trust, with me as the guarantor. I was the trust, and the trust had just decided to liquidate. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I had saved for emergencies. It wasn't the police. It was Titan Security Services, a private firm that specialized in high-end asset recovery. They didn't ask questions. They just executed orders. "This is dispatch," a voice answered, crisp and professional. "This is Reginald King," I said. "Account number Delta 74. Verification code, sir." Blueprints, I said. Go ahead, Mr. King. I need an immediate asset recovery. I said, keeping my eyes on the television screen where Darius was now pouring vodka into the mouth of a blonde woman I had never seen before. The Porsche 911 GT3, license plate King 03. It is currently parked in the long-term valet lot at O'Hare Airport. We have the location on file, sir, the dispatcher said. What is the order? Repossess it, I said. I want it on a flatbed within the hour. Take it to the impound lot at the dealership and send a team to the Spire. Unit 4B, the penthouse, sir. Yes. Trigger the electronic locks. Seal the unit. No one enters. If anyone is inside, escort them out. If no one is inside, change the codes. Understood, Mr. King, the dispatcher said. Reason for the order. Termination of usage rights, I said. The owner is reclaiming the property. Consider it done. I hung up. On the screen, Darius was now climbing onto a table. He was holding the black credit card up to the camera lens. See this, he shouted. This is the key to the city. Unlimited access, baby. The waiter is bringing the bill, and we are about to show them how the Kings do it. He waved at a waiter who was approaching with a leather folder. Check this out, Darius yelled to his followers. Watch the magic happen. He slapped the black card onto the tray. The waiter bowed slightly and took it walking away toward the point-of-sale terminal. I looked down at my tablet. I pulled up the credit card management screen for the trust. I found the card ending in 4098, the one assigned to Darius. The limit was technically unlimited because I always paid the balance in full every month. Not tonight. I clicked on the card details. Status active. I moved my finger over the toggle switch labeled Suspend Account. On the TV screen, Darius was doing a little dance waiting for his receipt. He was high-fiving his friends. He was the man of the hour. I tapped the screen. A small spinning wheel appeared. Then a green check mark. Status suspended. Reason reported stolen. I sat back and waited. The delay on the live stream was about 10 seconds. I watched Darius laugh. I watched him take a swig of champagne. Then I saw the waiter coming back. He wasn't smiling anymore. He wasn't bowing. He was walking fast, and he had a large man in a suit with an earpiece walking behind him. The manager. They approached the table. The music was loud, but the microphone picked up the change in atmosphere. Sir, the waiter said, leaning in close to Darius. What's good, my man, Darius said, reaching for the folder. We good. Sir. The card was declined. The waiter said loudly enough to be heard over the bass. Darius laughed, a nervous, incredulous laugh. Impossible, bro. Run it again. That's a platinum. There is no limit. We ran it 3 times, sir, the manager stepped in, his voice cutting through the noise. The bank says the card has been reported stolen. Stolen, Darius shouted. His face went from flushed to pale in a second. That is my card. My name is on it. Look at it. Sir, we need another form of payment, the manager said, crossing his arms. The bill is $5,200. Darius patted his pockets. He pulled out another card. A gold one, also issued by the trust. Also suspended by me 30 seconds ago. Try this one, he said, his voice cracking. The machine is probably just broken. The manager took it. He pulled out a handheld terminal from his pocket and swiped it right there in front of the camera. A loud beep echoed. A red light flashed. Declined. The chat on the live stream was going crazy. The hearts and fire emojis had stopped. Now the comments were scrolling fast. LOL declined. Bro is broke. Awkward. Daddy cut him off. I watched Darius look around the room. The hangers-on, the people drinking his liquor, they were starting to back away. The blonde woman had already disappeared. Yo guys, Darius said, turning to his friends, my bank is tripping. Someone cover this and I will Venmo you cash in the morning. I swear. Nobody moved. Nobody reached for their wallet. They were looking at their phones, avoiding eye contact. They smelled the weakness. They smelled the poverty. Sir, the manager said, stepping closer. If you cannot pay, we will have to call the police. This is theft of services. Darius looked at the camera, his eyes wide with panic. He suddenly remembered he was live. He scrambled to grab the phone. Yo, technical difficulties, guys. We gonna be right back, he stammered. The feed cut to black. I put the remote down. He was $5,000 in debt in a city where he knew no one, without a car, without a home to go back to, and without a father to bail him out. I looked at the notifications on my tablet. Porsche 911 GT3, status recovered, in transit, Unit 4B, status sealed, security detail posted. I thought about the times I had bailed him out before, the DUI in college, the gambling debt in Vegas, the assault charge that I made disappear with a high-priced lawyer. I had always shielded him. I had always told myself he was just finding his way. But he wasn't finding his way. He was lost. And the only way to find yourself is to be completely alone in the dark. I picked up my glass of water again. My hand was steady. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Darius. Dad, pick up. Emergency. Bank made a mistake. Need transfer ASAP. Cops involved. I looked at the message. I typed a reply. The bank didn't make a mistake. The account is closed. The car is gone. The apartment is locked. You called me stingy. You were right. Merry Christmas. I sent it. Then I blocked his number. I stood up and walked to the window. The snow was relentless. It covered the driveway where my children used to play. It covered the flower beds Beatrice used to tend. 3 strikes. They were all out. But I wasn't done. The night was still young and I had one more stop to make. Not a physical stop, but a spiritual one. I needed to say goodbye to the ghost that had been haunting this house for 5 years. I turned away from the window and looked at the hallway. The house was empty now. Truly empty. No more expectations. No more waiting for cars that would never pull into the driveway. I was the architect, and I had just demolished the building to save the foundation. Now, I just had to survive the night. I walked through the hallways of my own home like a ghost haunting a museum. The silence was absolute heavy enough to crush a man, but tonight it felt like clarity. The digital slaughter was over. The accounts were frozen, the cars were flagged, the locks were changing. But the hardest part wasn't clicking a mouse. It was walking past the open doors of the bedrooms where my children used to sleep. I stopped in front of Marcus's old room. It was still painted that serious navy blue he had insisted on when he was 16. There was a framed diploma on the wall, the one from the prep school in the suburbs. I reached out and touched the glass. It was cold. I remembered the day he got into that school. I was working as a foreman on the foundation of the Weston Tower. We were pouring concrete in 90-degree heat. The dust was so thick you could chew it. I coughed up gray phlegm for 3 hours that night. I had worked 16 hours that day and the day before and the day before that. I did it because the tuition for 1 semester cost more than my first car. I wanted him to walk into rooms I was only allowed to clean. I wanted him to have a seat at the table. And what did he do with that seat? He used it to look down on me. I remembered a voicemail from 2 years ago. It was Thanksgiving. I had cooked a turkey. I was sitting in the kitchen watching the parade alone. I called him. He didn't answer. He sent a text. Dad can't make it. Crisis merger meeting. Working all night. Sorry. I believed him. I was proud of him. My hard-working son. 3 days later, I saw the photos on social media. He wasn't in a meeting. He was at a yacht party in Miami with Tiffany's family. He was holding a cigar, laughing, wearing a linen suit I paid for. He wasn't working. He just didn't want to be seen with the old engineer who smelled like drywall and Bengay. He was ashamed of the sweat that paid for his champagne. I took the diploma off the wall. I didn't smash it. I just held it under my arm. I moved down the hall to Nia's room. It still smelled faintly of lavender and old perfume. On the dresser sat a small porcelain ballerina. I bought that for her when she was 10. She had wanted to be a dancer before she wanted to be a fashion mogul. I picked up the figurine. I remembered the winter of '98. The heating system in this house had died. It was going to cost $4,000 to replace the furnace. Nia had a school trip to Paris for her art class. It cost $3,000. I didn't fix the furnace. I slept in my coat for 2 months. I used space heaters in their rooms and froze in mine. I ate instant noodles so she could eat croissants on the Champs-Élysées. I wanted her to see beauty. I wanted her to know the world was bigger than the south side of Chicago. And how did she repay me last Mother's Day? The first one after Beatrice died. I asked her to come visit the grave with me. Just an hour. Daddy, I can't, she had whined. The store is drowning. Inventory issues. I have to do inventory all weekend or we go under. I sent her a check for $10,000 to help. She cashed it in an hour. That weekend, her mother-in-law posted a video. They were at a spa retreat in Arizona. Nia was getting a mud bath. She looked relaxed. She looked happy. She didn't look like a woman doing inventory. She looked like a woman spending her father's grief money on a facial. I swept the porcelain ballerina into my pocket. I grabbed the framed photo of Nia at her graduation, the one where she was looking away from the camera, already bored with me. I walked to the end of the hall. Darius's room. It was a shrine to wasted potential. Trophies for participation. Posters of rappers he tried to emulate. I remembered the night he was arrested for the first time. He was 18. He had beaten up a kid who made fun of his sneakers. I went to the precinct at 3:00 a.m. I was tired. My back was spasming so bad I could barely stand. I sat on a hard wooden bench for 6 hours waiting for the bail hearing. I paid the bail, I paid the lawyer, I paid the other kid's family to drop the charges. I told him it was a mistake, I told him he was a good boy. I protected him because I thought the world would eat him alive if I didn't. But I was wrong. I wasn't protecting him from the world. I was feeding him to his own worst instincts. I taught him that consequences were things that happened to other people. I taught him that Daddy could fix anything with a checkbook. I remembered his text from last week. Pops need $2K. Car trouble. Stuck on the side of the road. I sent the money. 10 minutes later, I saw him on a live stream. He was at a casino. He was betting on black. He wasn't stuck on the side of the road. He was stuck in his own greed. I grabbed the photo of Darius from his nightstand. He was smiling that charming, manipulative smile that had worked on me for 35 years. I walked back downstairs, my arms full of frames, my pockets heavy with porcelain lies. The house felt massive. It felt like a tomb I had built for myself. Every beam, every floorboard, every brick was paid for with my sweat. I had missed birthdays to pour foundations. I had missed school plays to inspect steel girders. I had traded my time, my health, and my youth to build a fortress for them, and they had locked me in the dungeon. I walked to the living room. The fireplace was cold, dark, empty, just like this family. I knelt down. My knees cracked a sound like a pistol shot in the quiet room. I piled the photos in the grate. Marcus in his suit, Naya in her designer dress, Darius with his fake smile, the diploma, the participation trophies. I reached for the box of matches again. My hands didn't shake, they were steady. These were the hands that held a pencil to draft the skyline of Chicago. These were the hands that tied rebar in the freezing rain. They were strong hands, capable hands. I struck a match. The smell of sulfur filled my nose. It was a clean smell, honest. I touched the flame to the corner of Marcus's diploma. The paper curled. The gold seal bubbled and turned black. I watched the fire spread. It licked at the glass of the frames, cracking it with sharp pings. It consumed the smiling faces of the children I thought I knew. I watched Marcus burn. I watched the lie of the busy executive melt away. I watched the lie of the devoted son turn to ash. I watched Naya burn. The spa trips, the fake business crises, the disdain for my old man smell. It all went up in smoke. I watched Darius burn, the gambling, the arrogance, the theft. The fire took it all, the heat hit my face. It felt good. It felt like waking up after a long, cold sleep. I wasn't just burning photos, I was burning the man I used to be. I was burning the doormat. I was burning the ATM. I was burning the lonely widower who sat by the phone waiting for crumbs of affection. That man died tonight. He died the moment he read that text message. I stood up as the fire roared, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. I saw my reflection in the dark window. I didn't see an old man. I didn't see a victim. I saw the architect. That was what they called me on the job sites in the 80s. The architect. Not because I had the degree yet, but because I could see the structure of a thing before it was built. I knew where the load-bearing walls were. I knew where the weak points were. I knew exactly where to place the dynamite to bring the whole thing down in a controlled demolition. I had built this family on a foundation of indulgence. That was a structural error. My error. And now I was correcting it. The fire popped and hissed. The faces were gone now, just black flakes floating up the chimney into the winter night. I turned my back on the fireplace. I didn't need to watch it burn out. I knew it would leave nothing behind but dust. I walked to the closet by the front door. I pulled out my coat. Not the old moth-eaten wool coat I wore when they came over so I wouldn't look intimidating. I pulled out my cashmere trench coat, the one I bought in Milan 10 years ago when I closed the deal on the waterfront project. I put it on. It fit perfectly. I buttoned it up. I put on my leather gloves. I put on my fedora. I looked like a man who owned the block. Because I did. I wasn't going to wait for them to come back and find me sitting in my pajamas crying over a turkey. I was going to be ready. I checked my watch. It was 3:00 a.m. They would be landing in 6 hours. They would come here first. They always came here first when they needed something or when they wanted to twist the knife. They would come to gloat. They would come to bully me into selling the house. Let them come. I walked to the kitchen and made a pot of coffee. Strong, black, the kind that keeps you alert on a night shift. I sat in the chair facing the front door. I crossed my legs. I folded my hands over my chest. I closed my eyes, but I didn't sleep. I visualized the plan. I visualized the look on Tiffany's face when the key didn't turn. I visualized Marcus's confusion when the security detail stopped him. I was the architect, and the blueprints for their destruction were flawless. Come home, children. Daddy is waiting. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck 9 times. The deep, resonant chimes vibrated through the soles of my Italian leather shoes. I stood in the foyer of my own home, a space I had designed, framed, and paid for with blood and sweat. But this morning it didn't feel like a home. It felt like a stage, and the curtains were about to go up on the final act. I adjusted my gold cufflinks. They were heavy, solid 24-karat gold engraved with the Kingston family crest, a lion holding a compass. I hadn't worn them in 15 years. I hadn't worn this suit in 10. It was a charcoal gray 3-piece bespoke masterpiece cut by a tailor in Milan who used to make suits for kings. It fit a little looser now than it did then, but it still commanded respect. It was armor. Next to me stood Cohen. He looked tired but sharp, his eyes scanning a sheaf of legal documents like a general reviewing a battle plan. Behind us stood 4 men. They were not family. They were not friends. They were private security contractors from Titan Services. 6'4", built like retaining walls, wearing black suits that strained against their shoulders. They stood with their hands clasped in front of them, silent and immovable. We waited. Outside, the winter storm had cleared, leaving a blindingly white morning. The silence of the snow-covered street was shattered by the screech of tires. I looked through the side window. A convoy of 3 taxis pulled up to the curb. They hadn't arrived in the company SUVs or the luxury sedans I paid for. Those had likely already been flagged or towed. No, they arrived in yellow cabs, looking disheveled and furious. Tiffany was the first out. She slammed the cab door so hard I saw the driver flinch. She was wearing a floor-length white fur coat that probably cost more than the taxi driver made in a year. But she didn't look glamorous. Her makeup was smeared from the night before. Her hair was a tangled mess of blonde extensions. She marched up the walkway, her boots crunching violently in the snow, her face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated entitlement. Behind her came Marcus, my son. He looked gray. His eyes were bloodshot, probably from the alcohol and the panic of a declined credit card. He wasn't wearing a coat, just his expensive suit jacket shivering in the Chicago wind. Nia and Darius trailed behind, looking like frightened children hiding behind their bullies. They stormed the porch like an invading army. They didn't ring the doorbell. They didn't knock. Tiffany grabbed the handle and yanked, locked. She yanked again, harder, rattling the heavy oak door against the frame. "Open this door!" she shrieked. Her voice pierced through the wood, shrill and demanding. "I know you're in there, old man. Open it right now." I stood motionless on the other side. I watched the door handle jiggle violently. Marcus joined in. He started pounding on the wood with his fist. The sound echoed through the house, boom, boom, boom. Dad, Marcus yelled. His voice was hoarse. "Quit playing games. We are freezing out here. Open the damn door. I didn't move. I let them pound. I let them scream. I wanted them to exhaust their entitlement. I wanted them to feel the cold biting into their skin." Reggie Tiffany screamed again. "I swear to God, if you don't open this door, I'm calling the police. We know you're in there. Don't you dare play dead. We know you're just hiding because you messed up the bank accounts. Don't play dead." That was what my son had said. Don't play dead. As if my life, my death was just an inconvenience to their schedule. As if the only reason I wouldn't answer the door was out of spite or incompetence, never out of authority. I looked at Cohen. He nodded once. A subtle, grim signal. I looked at the lead security guard. He stepped forward, his hand hovering over the deadbolt. I took a deep breath. The air in the house was warm, smelling of the fresh coffee I had brewed but not drunk. The air outside was sub-zero. The pressure differential was about to equalize. "Open it," I said. The guard turned the lock. The click was loud, a mechanical snap that sounded like a bone breaking. He pulled the door open. The sudden rush of freezing air swirled into the foyer, carrying snowflakes and the smell of exhaust fumes. Marcus stumbled forward, his fist raised to hammer on the door again, hitting nothing but air. He caught himself stumbling onto the entryway rug. Tiffany pushed past him, her fur coat bristling with static electricity. Finally, she spat, not even looking up at first. Do you have any idea how embarrassing it is to have your card declined in front of—" Her voice died in her throat. She looked up. She didn't see an old man in a bathrobe holding a cup of tea. She didn't see a confused pensioner apologizing for a banking error. She saw me. She saw the charcoal gray suit. She saw the silk tie knotted with a perfect Windsor. She saw the gold cufflinks catching the morning light. She saw the posture of a man who had built skyscrapers from mud. And then she saw the wall of muscle behind me. 4 guards' stone-faced arms crossed, and Cohen holding a stack of papers that looked like a death sentence. Tiffany froze. Her mouth hung open, her lipstick smeared at the corners. She took a half step back, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Marcus straightened up, blinking rapidly. He looked from me to the guards, then back to me. His brain was trying to process the data, but the file was corrupted. This wasn't his father. This was a stranger wearing his father's face. Dad, Marcus whispered, What is this? Who are these people?" Nia and Darius huddled in the doorway, shivering, their eyes wide. They looked like deer caught in the headlights of a semi-truck. I didn't smile. I didn't offer them a coat. I didn't ask them if they had a nice flight. I clasped my hands behind my back and looked down at them from the top of the foyer steps. I felt 10 feet tall. "Welcome," I said. My voice was calm, deep, and devoid of any warmth. It echoed off the high ceilings. "Welcome to the extraordinary shareholders' meeting." Tiffany blinked, her confusion turning into a defensive snarl. "What are you talking about? Shareholders' meeting? Have you lost your mind? We are here to get you to sign the papers for the house sale. We need the cash released immediately to fix whatever mess you made with the accounts." She reached into her oversized designer bag and pulled out a crinkled document. She waved it at me like a weapon. "Sign it," she demanded, stepping forward. "Sign it so we can get out of this freezing hallway and go to a hotel. You can go to Sun Valley today for all I care. Just sign the damn paper." One of the guards stepped forward, blocking her path. He didn't touch her. He just occupied the space she wanted to be in. She slammed into his chest like a bird hitting a window. "Get out of my way!" she screeched, trying to push him. He didn't budge an inch. I stepped down one stair. "Put the paper away, Tiffany," I said. "There is no house to sell." What Marcus asked, his voice trembling. "What do you mean? Of course there is. We're standing in it. Dad, stop this. Why are you dressed like that? Why is Mr. Cohen here?" Cohen stepped forward. He adjusted his glasses. "Mr. King," Cohen said, addressing Marcus formally. "Please step back onto the rug. You are dripping melting snow onto the marble." Marcus looked down at his feet, then back at Cohen. "Cohen, what is going on? Tell my dad to send these goons away. We need to talk about the finances." "We are talking about the finances, Marcus," I said. "Specifically your finances, or rather the lack thereof." I signaled to Cohen. Cohen handed a thick envelope to Marcus. He handed another to Nia, and another to Darius. He didn't hand one to Tiffany. She wasn't blood, she was just collateral damage. Marcus opened the envelope. His hands were shaking so bad he almost dropped the papers. He pulled out a letter with the Kingston Holdings letterhead. We own this company," Marcus stammered, looking at the logo. "I work for MK Capital, but Kingston is the parent." "Read it, Marcus," I commanded. He read. His eyes scanned the page. His face went from gray to white to a sickly shade of green. "Termination," he choked out. "Gross misconduct, embezzlement. Dad, what is this? I'm the CEO. You can't— Who signed this?" He looked at the bottom of the page. He saw the signature. It was a signature he had seen on birthday cards and tuition checks his entire life. But this time it didn't say, "Love, Dad." It said, "Reginald King, Chairman of the Board. You," Marcus whispered, "you own Kingston." "I founded Kingston Holdings in 1978, Marcus the First said. "Before you were born. I built it with a slide rule and a shovel. MK Capital is a wholly owned subsidiary, and as of midnight last night, you are fired." "Fired?" Tiffany screamed. She grabbed Marcus's arm. "He can't fire you. He's just a senile old man, Marcus. Do something." "He can't do anything, Tiffany," I said, turning my gaze to her. "Because he is currently under investigation for stealing $200,000 of company funds to pay for your ski trip." "That's a lie," Tiffany yelled. "That was a business expense. Client development ski rentals for your sister are not client development," I said. Marcus looked up at me. His eyes were wet. "Dad, please. The house. The mortgage." "Read the next page," I said. He flipped the page. "Eviction notice. Immediate." "Dad, no." Marcus pleaded. We have nowhere to go. The locks. The locks were changed at 8:00 a.m., I said. Your key cards don't work. Your car has been repossessed. You are standing in the only warm place you have access to, and you are currently trespassing. Nia dropped her envelope. She fell to her knees on the rug, sobbing. My store, she wailed. My store is locked. There's a padlock on the door. I got a text from the manager. Dad, why are you doing this? Because you violated the contract. Nia, I said. Clause 14b, you disparaged the lender, you called me stingy, you wanted 40% of my home, now you have 100% of your debt, immediate repayment, $1.5 million, due today. I don't have it, she screamed. Then you are bankrupt, I said. Darius didn't even open his envelope. He just stared at me. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. The bravado from the live stream was gone. The Porsche, he whispered. Gone, I said. The penthouse sealed. The credit cards cut. But why? Darius asked, his voice cracking like a teenager's. It was just a joke, Pops. The text. It was just a joke. We didn't mean it. I looked at the three of them, my children, broken, crying, begging. For a second, the old Reggie wanted to step forward. The father wanted to hug them, to tell them it was just a lesson to fix it all. Then I looked at Tiffany. She wasn't crying. She was glaring at me with pure hate. This is illegal, she shouted. You can't just throw us out on the street. We have rights, squatters' rights, tenants' rights. I will sue you for every penny you have. Cohen stepped forward again. Actually, Mrs. King, Cohen said smoothly, the housing agreement Marcus signed clearly states that residency is contingent upon employment with the company. Termination of employment results in immediate termination of the housing benefit. It's standard corporate policy. And as for the lawsuit, Cohen smiled. A shark smile. I would advise you to save your legal fees for the embezzlement defense. You are listed as a co-conspirator on the spending. Tiffany lunged. She didn't think. She just reacted. She launched herself at me, her fingernails aiming for my face, a primal scream tearing from her throat. You ruined my life. She didn't make it 2 steps. The lead guard intercepted her. He caught her by the arms and spun her around, pinning her arms behind her back with professional ease. Let me go, she screamed, kicking and thrashing. Remove her, I said. Marcus. Help me, Tiffany shrieked. Your father is assaulting me. Marcus didn't move. He was staring at the floor, holding his termination letter, paralyzed by the sudden realization that he was not the main character in this story. He was just an employee, and he had just been let go. The guard dragged Tiffany toward the door. She dug her heels into the rug, leaving streaks in the fabric. Her fur coat slipped off one shoulder, revealing the cheap lining underneath. You're a monster, she screamed as she was hauled out into the snow. You're going to die alone. I watched the door slam shut behind her. The silence rushed back into the room, but it was different now. It was the silence of a judge's gavel hitting the wood. I looked at my 3 children. They were shivering. Not from the cold outside, but from the cold reality inside. The meeting is adjourned, I said. Get out. Tiffany's laughter cut through the tension in the room like a serrated knife, sharp, jagged, and completely devoid of humor. It was the sound of a woman whose brain simply refused to accept the reality standing in front of her. She looked at my Italian suit. She looked at the wall of security guards, and she looked at the stack of legal documents in Cohen's hands, and she decided to reject it all. To her, I was still just the old man who paid the bills, the senile grandfather who needed to be managed, the obstacle between her and a 7-figure payout. She tossed her head back, her tangled blonde extensions whipping around, and let out a cackle that bounced off the high ceilings of the foyer. Shareholders meeting, she mocked, her voice dripping with condensation and venom. Did you hear that, Marcus? Your father has finally lost it completely. He thinks he's running a board meeting in his pajamas. She took a step toward me, brandishing the real estate contract like a weapon, ignoring the security guard who tensed up but held his ground. Listen to me, Reggie. We are not playing pretend today. We are freezing, we are tired, and we have a very expensive mess to clean up because of your banking errors. So drop the axe, sign the damn paper, and let us get on with our lives. She thrust a pen toward me. It was a cheap plastic ballpoint she had probably dug out of her purse. Sign it, she hissed. Now. I didn't reach for the pen. I didn't even look at it. I kept my eyes locked on Marcus. My son was standing a few feet behind his wife, shivering in his suit jacket, his face pale and drawn. He wasn't laughing. He was looking at me with a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. He was a businessman, or at least he pretended to be one. He knew what a hostile takeover looked like. He knew what a security detail meant. And he knew that Cohen, standing silently at my right hand, was not a man who made house calls on Christmas morning for social reasons. "Marcus," I said, my voice calm and level, "your wife seems to be under the impression that this is a negotiation. Please inform her that the time for negotiation passed when you boarded that plane to Aspen." Marcus opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked at Tiffany, then back at me. "Dad," he stammered, "what is going on? Why is Cohen here? Why are you dressed like that?" Cohen stepped forward. The movement was small, precise, and terrifyingly professional. He adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses and opened the thick leather portfolio he had been holding against his chest. He extracted a single crisp white envelope. It wasn't a Christmas card. It was a legal summons. Mr. King Cohen said, his voice dry as dust. He held the envelope out to Marcus. "This is for you." Marcus stared at the envelope. His hand came up slowly, trembling like a leaf in a gale. He took it. The paper rattled in his grip. "What is this?" Marcus whispered. "It is a notice of immediate termination," Cohen said. He didn't blink. He didn't apologize. He delivered the news with the flat affect of an executioner reading a verdict. "As of midnight last night, you have been relieved of your duties at Kingston Holdings and all its subsidiaries, including MK Capital. Your security clearance has been revoked. Your access to company servers has been terminated, and your corporate accounts have been frozen." Tiffany gasped. "Fired!" she shrieked, spinning around to face Cohen. "You can't fire him. He is the CEO. He built that firm. You're just the family lawyer. You have no authority." Cohen ignored her. He kept his eyes fixed on Marcus. Additionally, he continued, his voice dropping an octave, becoming heavier, harder. "We have filed a civil suit against you this morning in the Circuit Court of Cook County. The charge is embezzlement of corporate funds." "Embezzlement," Marcus choked out. The word seemed to physically hit him in the chest. He staggered back a half step. $200,000, Mr. King Cohen said. "Expenses related to unauthorized travel, luxury accommodations, and personal entertainment charged to the company account over the last fiscal quarter. The forensic accounting team completed their audit at 4:00 a.m. this morning. The evidence is irrefutable." "That was a business trip," Tiffany yelled, grabbing Marcus's arm as if to hold him upright. "We were networking. That is client development. You can't call that embezzlement. Ski rentals for your sister are not client development," Mrs. King Cohen said, cutting her off without raising his voice. "Neither are spa treatments. Neither is the 50-year-old scotch your husband ordered to the room. It is theft, and we are prosecuting." Marcus looked like he was going to be sick. He ripped open the envelope. He pulled out the documents. His eyes scanned the pages frantically, looking for a mistake, a loophole, a joke. He saw the termination order. He saw the lawsuit. He saw the asset freeze notification. "My accounts," Marcus whispered. "My personal accounts." Frozen Cohen confirmed. "Pending the restitution of the stolen funds, the company has placed a lien on all assets held in your name to recover the debt. Your checking account, your savings, your investment portfolio. It is all locked down, Marcus. You cannot buy a cup of coffee this morning." Marcus looked up. His eyes were wide, glassy, with tears of panic. "But Dad," he pleaded, looking past Cohen to me, "you can't let them do this. I'm your son. This is a mistake. I can explain. It's just paperwork. Fix it. Please, just call the board. Tell them to back off." I didn't say anything. I just watched him. I watched him crumble. I watched the arrogance drain out of him, leaving nothing but a scared little boy who had been caught with his hand in the cookie jar. "Look at the signature," Marcus Cohen said softly. Marcus looked back down at the papers in his hand. He turned to the last page of the termination notice. His eyes focused on the bottom line, the line where the ultimate authority of the company resided. He saw the logo first, Kingston Holdings, a lion holding a compass. He had seen that logo 1,000 times. It was on his paychecks. It was on the building directory. It was the silent giant that funded his entire life. But he had never really looked, at who sat on the throne. Then he saw the signature. It was bold. It was sweeping. It was written in black ink with a fountain pen. It was the same signature that had signed his report cards, the same signature that had signed the checks for his tuition, the same signature that had signed the mortgage deed for the house he was about to be evicted from. Reginald King, chairman of the board. The paper slipped from his fingers and fluttered to the floor. Marcus looked up at me. His mouth hung open. His face was the color of old ash. The realization hit him like a physical blow, staggering him. The world he thought he understood, the hierarchy he had built in his mind, where he was the prince and I was the pauper, dissolved instantly. "Dad," he whispered, his voice cracking. You are the chairman. You own Kingston." Tiffany stopped screaming. She looked from Marcus to me, her eyes darting back and forth, trying to compute the new data. What she breathed. What is he talking about? Reggie is a retired engineer. He fixes bridges. Marcus ignored her. He took a step toward me, his hands reaching out as if he wanted to touch me to make sure I was real. "You own it all, MK Capital, the portfolio, the real estate. It's all you." I turned to the small side table in the foyer. On it sat a silver tray with a single porcelain teacup. I had placed it there before they arrived. It was Earl Grey hot with a slice of lemon. I picked up the saucer. The china clinked softly. I lifted the cup to my lips and took a slow, deliberate sip. The tea was warm and bitter. It tasted like victory. I lowered the cup. I looked my son in the eye. I didn't see the boy I raised. I saw an employee who had stolen from me. I saw a man who had left me to eat alone on Christmas Eve. I set the cup back down. The sound was a sharp click in the silent hallway. "I am not Dad right now, Marcus," I said. My voice was low, cold, and final. "I am the chairman. And the chairman just fired you." Marcus's knees gave out. He didn't fall, but he sagged, catching himself on the doorframe. He looked at me with a mixture of awe and absolute terror. He realized in that second that he had spent his entire life underestimating the man who built the roof over his head. I turned my gaze to Tiffany. She was staring at me, her mouth agape, the color draining from her face as the implications of my words crashed into her materialistic worldview. "Get out of my house," I said. Marcus didn't move. He couldn't move. He just stared at the signature on the floor, the ink black against the white marble, a contract broken, a legacy burned. "Now," I said to the guards. They stepped forward. "You are a liar," Tiffany screamed. Her voice cracked, fracturing into a shrill, hysterical pitch that grated against the marble walls of my foyer. She stepped away from Marcus as if his failure was a contagious disease she didn't want to catch and pointed a manicured finger directly at my face. "You are a liar and a sad, jealous old man. My husband is a genius. Do you hear me? He is an investment prodigy. He built MK Capital from nothing. He is on the cover of Forbes. You are just a retired laborer. You are just a poor old black man who got lucky with a pension and thinks he matters." The words hung in the air, ugly and naked. She had finally said it. She had finally spoken the quiet part out loud. For 15 years, she had tolerated me. She had eaten my food and accepted my gifts, all while looking down her nose at my skin, my history, and my hands. She didn't see the engineer. She didn't see the architect. She saw a stereotype. She saw what she wanted to see, someone beneath her, someone she could use. Marcus flinched. Even in his state of shock, he knew she had gone too far. He knew that calling the man who signed his paychecks a poor old black man was not a winning strategy. He reached out to grab her arm to silence her, but she shook him off with a violent jerk. "Don't touch me," she yelled at him, then turned back to me, her eyes wild. "You can't fire him. You can't touch us. We have assets. We have the house in Highland Park. It's worth $4 million. We have the cars. We have status. You can't take that away with a piece of paper." I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had spent a decade trying to erase my influence on my grandchildren. I looked at the woman who had laughed at my accent and mocked my clothes. I didn't shout. I didn't get angry. I just reached out to Cohen. "The blue folder," I said. Cohen handed it to me. It was lighter than the others, but it held more weight. It contained the deed to the mansion Tiffany was so proud of. The mansion she threw dinner parties in, where she told her friends that her husband was a titan of industry. I took the folder. I didn't hand it to her. I tossed it onto the side table right next to my teacup. It landed with a heavy, authoritative thud. "Tiffany," I said, my voice smooth and dangerous like black ice. "I think there is a fundamental misunderstanding about the nature of your lifestyle. You seem to believe that you own things. You don't." I walked closer to her. The security guards tensed, ready to intercept, but I held up a hand. I wanted to deliver this news personally. "The house in Highland Park," I began. "The one with the heated driveway and the home theater. You think you bought that with what money? Tiffany Marcus's salary?" She glared at me, her chest heaving. "We paid the mortgage. Marcus handled the finances." "Marcus handled nothing," I said. I turned to my son. "Tell her, Marcus. Tell her who signed the checks for the down payment. Tell her whose name is on the title." Marcus looked at the floor. He couldn't meet her eyes. It's a corporate lease, Tiff," he whispered. "What?" she snapped. "It's held by Kingston Holdings." Marcus mumbled, his voice defeated. "Dad. The chairman. He bought it. We just live there. It was part of my compensation package. Executive housing." Tiffany went still. The color drained from her face so fast it looked like the blood had simply evaporated. "Corporate housing," she whispered. "You told me we owned it. You told me it was ours." "He lied," I said. "Just like he lied about being a genius. Just like he lied about affording the ski trip. He lives on my charity, Tiffany. And so do you." I pointed to the blue folder. "That is the deed," I said. "It lists Kingston Holdings as the sole owner. And since Marcus is no longer an employee of Kingston Holdings as of midnight last night, his executive privileges have been revoked." I paused, letting the reality sink in. "That includes the housing benefit," I said. Tiffany started to shake. Her hands trembled at her sides. "No," she breathed. You can't just kick us out. We have clothes there. We have furniture. You have 24 hours, I said. 24 hours, she shrieked. It's Christmas. The eviction notice is effective immediately, I said. My security team is already en route to the property. They will allow you 1 day to remove your personal effects. Anything left on the premises after 9:00 a.m. tomorrow will be considered abandoned property and will be auctioned off to recoup a fraction of the money your husband stole from me. I checked my watch. Actually, you have 23 hours and 45 minutes left. Tick-tock, Tiffany. She looked around the room, desperate, searching for an exit for a savior. She looked at Nia, who was still sobbing on the floor. She looked at Darius, who was staring at the wall in shock. She realized she was alone. The illusion of her power had evaporated. But I wasn't finished. Oh, and one more thing, I said. I gestured toward the window, toward the snowy driveway where the taxis were idling. How did you get to the airport for your trip? Did you drive the Range Rover? Tiffany blinked, confused by the sudden change in topic. Yes, she spat. We drove the Rover. It's parked in the private hangar lot. Why do you care? Because that is a company car, I said. No, she yelled. That was a birthday gift. Marcus gave it to me for my birthday. It has a red bow on it. Marcus leased it through the company fleet account, I corrected her. He expensed the payments as travel logistics. It belongs to Kingston Holdings. And since he has fired, unauthorized use of company vehicles is considered grand theft auto. I looked at the lead security guard. Mr. Henderson, I said. Yes, Mr. King. The guard replied, his voice deep and gravelly. Please collect the keys to the Range Rover from Mrs. King's purse. Also dispatch a tow team to the private hangar at O'Hare. Recover the asset. Mr. Henderson stepped forward. He held out a hand, palm open. The keys, ma'am. Tiffany looked at the guard's hand. She looked at her designer purse. She looked at me. Something snapped in her. The veneer of the sophisticated socialite, the mask of the wealthy housewife cracked and fell away. Beneath it was something raw, ugly, and desperate. The street fighter she had been before she met my son clawed its way to the surface. You are not taking my car, she screamed. She lunged. She didn't go for me this time. She went for the table. She went for the blue folder. In her panicked mind, if she could just destroy the paper, she could destroy the truth. If she could rip up the deed, she could keep the house. It was the logic of a cornered animal. She moved fast, her fur coat flying behind her like a cape. Her hand clawed out fingernails hooked like talons. She never reached the table. Mr. Henderson moved with a speed that defied his size. He didn't tackle her. He didn't strike her. He simply stepped into her path and became a wall. Tiffany slammed into him. It was like watching a wave break against a cliff. The impact knocked the wind out of her. She bounced off his chest and stumbled backward, her heels slipping on the marble floor. She flailed her arms, wheeling, and then she fell. She hit the ground hard. She landed in a heap of white fur and humiliation. Her purse spilled open. Lipstick, a compact mirror, credit cards, and a heavy ring of keys slid across the floor, scattering like marbles. Mr. Henderson bent down. He didn't look at her. He simply reached out and picked up the key fob with the Range Rover logo. "Thank you, ma'am," he said. Tiffany sat on the floor, gasping for air. Her hair was in her face. Her coat was twisted around her legs. She looked up at me, and I saw the hate burning in her eyes, hot and bright. But beneath the hate, I saw the fear. For the first time in her life, she was looking at a man she couldn't manipulate. She was looking at a man she couldn't bully. You evil old bastard," she hissed. "You planned this. You waited for Christmas. You wanted to hurt us." I looked down at her. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel joy. I just felt tired. Tired of the lies. Tired of the disrespect. Tired of pretending that her behavior was acceptable just to keep the peace. "I didn't plan for you to steal from me, Tiffany," I said. "I didn't plan for you to insult me. I didn't plan for you to try to put me in a home. You did that. All I did was correct the accounting." I turned to Cohen. "The eviction team is on standby." "Yes," Reggie Cohen said. "They are waiting for your signal." "Give it," I said, "and tell them to check the closets. I believe Tiffany has a tendency to hide company assets in her shoeboxes." Tiffany let out a guttural scream of rage. She scrambled to her feet, abandoning her dignity entirely. She looked like she was going to charge again, but Mr. Henderson simply shifted his weight and she froze. She realized the game was over. The house was gone. The car was gone. The money was gone. The status she worshipped was gone. She turned to Marcus. He was still standing there, useless, staring at his feet. "Do something," she shrieked at him, slapping his arm. "Fight him. He's your father. Hit him. Take the papers. Do something." Marcus looked at her. He looked at the woman he had embezzled $200,000 to impress. He looked at the woman who had driven a wedge between him and his blood. He pulled away from her. "Stop it, Tiff," Marcus whispered. "Just stop. He's the chairman. He's nobody," she yelled. "He owns everything." Marcus shouted back, his voice breaking. "Don't you get it? He owns the house. He owns the car. He owns the bank accounts. We have nothing. It's over." Tiffany stared at him. Her chest heaved. She looked around the foyer, at the security guards, at the lawyer, at the cold, impassive face of her father-in-law. She grabbed her purse from the floor, shoving the spilled contents back inside with frantic, jerky movements. "Fine," she spat. "Keep your house. Keep your money. I don't need you. I don't need any of you." She turned toward the door. She didn't wait for Marcus. She didn't look back at Nia or Darius. She marched out into the snow coat flapping, head held high in a grotesque parody of pride. But she was walking into a blizzard. She was walking to a curb where no car was waiting for her. She was walking into a world where her name meant nothing and her credit score was 0. I watched her go. The silence returned. I looked at Marcus. "Your wife seems to be leaving," I said. "You might want to follow her. You have a lot of packing to do." Marcus looked at me. A single tear rolled down his cheek. "Dad." "Get out, Marcus," I said, "and leave your keycard on the table." He placed his company ID on the silver tray next to the teacup. He turned and walked out the door, his shoulders slumped, a broken man walking into the cold. I didn't watch him leave. I turned my attention to the two who remained, Nia and Darius. They were huddled together, terrified. "Nia," I said. My voice echoed in the empty hall. "Step forward." She trembled. She wiped her face. She stood up and walked toward me, looking like a prisoner walking to the gallows. It was time to talk about her boutiques. It was time to talk about the loans. It was time to talk about the fact that she was 40 years old and still waiting for Daddy to fix her mistakes. Daddy isn't fixing anything today, I thought. Daddy is foreclosing. Tiffany screamed as the heavy oak door slammed shut, cutting off her profanity and leaving a ringing silence in the foyer. The snowstorm outside was muffled now, but the storm inside was just finding its second wind. The air in the room felt thin, charged with the static of ruined lives. I didn't look at the door. I looked at Nia. My daughter was kneeling on the Persian rug, her knees digging into the intricate patterns. She was wearing a cashmere sweater dress that I knew cost $1,200 because I had paid the credit card bill it was charged to. Her mascara was running down her cheeks in black rivulets, staining her perfect face. She looked like a broken doll, discarded and forgotten. She looked up at me, her eyes wide and pleading. She scrambled to her feet, her movements jerky and desperate. She took a step toward me, reaching out with manicured hands that had never washed a dish or scrubbed a floor. "Daddy," She sobbed, her voice trembling. "Daddy, please, this is insane. Marcus is a criminal. If he stole from you, he deserves it. I get it. I really do. But I didn't do anything." She wiped her nose with the back of her hand, smearing makeup across her cheek. "I am not Marcus," she pleaded, her voice rising in pitch. "I have my own business. I have my own life. I am building a brand, Daddy. You know how hard I work. You know how much Lux Noir means to me. You can't punish me for what he did. That's not fair." I watched her throw her brother under the bus without a second of hesitation. She didn't care that Marcus was ruined. She didn't care that he was facing jail time. She only cared that the shrapnel didn't hit her. It was a survival instinct, I supposed. But it was an ugly one. I took a step down from the foyer landing. I stood on the same level as her now. I towered over her, not just in height, but in the weight of the secrets I held. "You are right, Nia," I said. My voice was calm, almost conversational. "You are not Marcus. You didn't embezzle corporate funds." She let out a breath, a ragged gasp of relief. She smiled, a watery, hopeful thing. "Exactly," she said. "I am your daughter. I am your little girl." I know I haven't been around much lately, and I know the text message was insensitive. But I was stressed. "The business is growing so fast, Daddy. I just need a little more time." I looked at Cohen. He was already opening the red accordion folder. "You don't need time, Nia," I said. "You need a reality check." Cohen stepped forward. He didn't hand her an envelope like he did with Marcus. He handed her a single sheet of paper. It was a foreclosure notice, and underneath it was a demand for payment. Nia took the paper. She looked at it, frowning. "Apex Ventures?" she asked, confused. Why is Cohen giving me a notice from Apex Ventures? They are my investors. They are my partners." I walked over to the side table and poured myself another cup of tea. I didn't drink it. I just held the warm porcelain in my hands. "Apex Ventures is not your partner, Nia," I said. "Apex Ventures is a holding company." So she asked, looking between me and Cohen. "What does that have to do with you?" I turned to face her. "I am Apex Ventures," I said. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of a worldview shattering. Nia stared at me. Her brain was trying to rewrite 10 years of history. "No," she whispered. "No, that's impossible. I met with them. I met with Mr. Henderson. He signed the checks." "Mr. Henderson works for me," I said. "He is my proxy. Every loan application you submitted, every expansion plan you drafted, every sob story about inventory costs and marketing budgets. It all came to my desk, Nia. I approved it. I signed the checks." Nia shook her head, backing away. "But why? Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I wanted you to feel successful," I said. "I wanted you to believe that someone out there believed in your vision. I wanted you to have pride, but pride requires work, Nia, and you didn't work, you spent." I pointed to the paper in her hand. "Read the bottom line," I said. She looked down. Her eyes darted across the figures. "Total principal and interest due $1,542,000. "I don't have this," she whispered. "You know I don't have this." "I know," I said. "Then why are you calling it in?" she asked, looking up at me with tears spilling over again. "The contract says I have 5 years on the balloon payment. You can't just demand it all at once." Cohen cleared his throat. "Actually, Ms. King," Cohen said, his voice cutting through her hysteria. "We can. Please refer to Clause 14B of your loan agreement, the character and conduct clause." Nia blinked. "What?" "It is a standard morality clause," Cohen explained, though in this case the definitions are quite specific. "The lender reserves the right to accelerate the debt and demand immediate repayment in full if the borrower engages in conduct that is deemed detrimental to the relationship between the parties." He paused, adjusting his glasses. Specifically, the addendum defines detrimental conduct as including, but not limited to, acts of gross ingratitude, disrespect, or abandonment of the lender during significant calendar events. Nia stared at him. "Abandonment." "You left your father alone on Christmas Eve," Cohen said bluntly. "You went to Aspen, you ignored his invitation, and then you sent a text message." Cohen reached into his pocket and pulled out a printout of a screenshot. He held it up. "Don't be stingy, Dad." Cohen read aloud. "Sell the house. Give me 40%. Nia's face went white. That That was just a text, she stammered. I was joking. It is written evidence of your intent to liquidate the lender's primary residence for your own gain, Cohen said. It is evidence of malice. It is evidence that you view the lender not as a partner or a father, but as a resource to be stripped. He lowered the paper. Clause 14B is triggered, Ms. King. The loan is in default. The total amount is due immediately. Nia looked at me. Dad, please. This is a technicality. You can't ruin my business over a text message. I am not ruining your business, Nia, I said. I am repossessing my assets. I walked closer to her. You wanted to expand, I said. You wanted 40%. Well, 40% of nothing is nothing, I signaled to one of the security guards. He handed me a tablet. On the screen was a live feed from a security camera. It showed the front of the Luxe Noir flagship store on Michigan Avenue. It was 9:30 a.m. The holiday shoppers were starting to gather. But the store was dark. The metal grate was pulled down, and pasted on the glass front door was a large orange sticker. Seized by order of the court. Nia looked at the screen. She gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. My store, she choked out. My customers. It's Christmas. We have the holiday sale today. No, you don't, I said. The locks were changed an hour ago, I continued. The inventory inside the dresses, the shoes, the handbags was purchased with funds from Apex Ventures. Since the loan is in default, the collateral has been seized. Nia grabbed my arm. Dad, you can't. That inventory is worth $300,000. If we sell it this week, I can pay you back some of it. Please, just let me open the store. I pulled my arm away. I brushed the sleeve of my suit where she had touched me. I am not interested in your sales figures, Nia, I said, and I'm not interested in your money anymore. I looked at the screen again. A work crew was arriving at the store. They weren't customers, they were movers. They were carrying large cardboard boxes. What are they doing? Nia whispered. They are liquidating, I said. Liquidating, she asked. You are selling it? No, I said. I am donating it. Nia froze. Donating? Yes, I said. Every single item in that store, every silk scarf, every Italian leather boot, every overpriced accessory, it is all being packed up right now. By noon, the store will be empty. Where is it going? She asked, her voice barely a squeak. The Southside Women's Shelter, I said. Nia's jaw dropped. The shelter. But that's designer clothing. Those are couture pieces. You can't just give them away to homeless people. Why not? I asked. They need clothes, and you need a lesson in humility. You are throwing away my legacy, she screamed. Your legacy is a lie, I shouted back, my voice echoing off the walls. I finally let the anger show. I finally let the fire out. You built nothing, I roared. I built it, I paid the rent, I paid the staff, I bought the clothes. You just played dress-up. You walked around acting like a queen while I paid for the crown. Nia shrank back, terrified. She had never seen me like this. She had never heard the architect raise his voice. You called me stingy, I said, lowering my voice to a dangerous growl. You told me to eat alone. Well, now you can see what stingy really looks like. I turned to Cohen. The house, I said. Cohen nodded. He handed Nia another paper. This is a notice of foreclosure on your personal residence, Cohen said. The brownstone in Lincoln Park. You put it up as collateral for the Miami expansion loan. Since that loan is now called and you cannot pay, the collateral is forfeit. Nia looked at the paper. She was shaking so hard she could barely hold it. My home, she whispered. It belongs to Apex Ventures, I said. You have 30 days to vacate. But knowing your spending habits, I doubt you can afford a moving truck, so I suggest you start packing your bags now. You are making me homeless, she cried. I am your daughter. You are a 40-year-old woman, I said. You are not a child. You are a failed business owner who tried to cannibalize her own father. I looked at her one last time. She was weeping broken, a princess stripped of her castle. You are officially bankrupt, Nia, I said. I turned away from her. I didn't want to see her cry anymore. Her tears were just water. They didn't wash away the text message. They didn't wash away the years of neglect. I looked at Darius. He was the last one. He was standing in the corner trying to make himself invisible. He had seen his brother fired. He had seen his sister destroyed. He knew he was next. I walked toward him. Your turn, son, I said. Darius looked at me like a trapped animal. He had watched his brother Marcus get stripped of his title and his home. He had watched his sister Nia lose her business and her dignity. He was the last one standing in the corner of the foyer, pressing his back against the silk wallpaper as if he could melt through the drywall and disappear into the insulation. He was wearing a Balenciaga hoodie that I knew for a fact cost $900 because I had seen the charge on the American Express statement 3 weeks ago. He was shaking. His hands were twitching at his sides. He looked at the door where Tiffany and Marcus had vanished into the snow. He looked at Nia, still weeping on the floor. Then he looked at me. His eyes darted around the room, calculating his odds. He was 35 years old, but in that moment he looked exactly like the teenager who used to sneak out of his window to smoke weed in the alley. He was looking for an angle. He was looking for a hustle. I took a step toward him. "Your turn, Darius," I said. My voice was low, vibrating through the floorboards. Darius flinched. He held up his hands, palms out. "Nah, Pops," he said, his voice high and thready. "We don't need to do this, I get it. Message received, loud and clear. You're mad, you're cutting us off, fine, cool." He took a step sideways, edging toward the door. "I don't need your money," Darius said, trying to summon a shred of the arrogance he had displayed on the live stream just 12 hours ago. "I'm a brand. Okay, I have followers. I have influence. I can make my own way. I don't need your handouts." He laughed, a nervous, jagged sound. "Keep your money, old man. Keep your boring house. I'm out of here. I'm going back to the city. I have friends who actually appreciate me." He lunged for the door handle. He thought he was free. He thought the worst thing that was going to happen to him today was a long cab ride and a frozen credit card. He thought he could just walk away from the wreckage he had helped create. He grabbed the heavy brass handle and yanked the door open. He didn't step out into the snow. He stepped back, stumbling, nearly tripping over his own expensive sneakers. 2 uniformed officers from the Chicago Police Department were standing on the porch. The cold wind swirled around them, blowing snow into the foyer for the second time that morning. Their faces were red from the cold, but their eyes were hard. Behind them, a squad car sat idling in the driveway, its blue and red lights reflecting off the white snow, painting the walls of my house in alternating flashes of violence. Darius froze. "Can I help you, officers?" Darius stammered, his voice cracking. One of the officers, a sergeant with a thick mustache and eyes that had seen too much of the South Side, stepped across the threshold. He didn't look at me. He looked straight at my son. "Darius King?" the sergeant asked. Darius swallowed. "Yeah, that's me. What's going on?" "Is this about the noise?" The sergeant reached for his belt. The sound of handcuffs rattling was loud in the silent house. It was a metallic final sound. "Mr. King, we have a warrant for your arrest," the sergeant said. "Arrest?" Darius squeaked. "For what? I didn't do anything." The sergeant pulled a folded paper from his vest. "We have multiple counts here, son," the sergeant said. "Credit card fraud, identity theft, issuing bad checks, and grand larceny." Darius's knees buckled. He grabbed the doorframe to stay upright. "Fraud? That's impossible. Those are my cards." "Actually," the sergeant said, glancing at a clipboard. "The complaint alleges that you knowingly used credit instruments belonging to the King Family Trust after authorization had been explicitly revoked. It also alleges that you forged signatures on 3 separate checks totaling $15,000 in the last month alone." Darius's face went white. He looked at the officer, then he looked past him to Cohen. Cohen was standing by the stairs, his face impassive. He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod to the police officer. Cohen had called them. Cohen had filed the report at 4 a.m. while I was watching the fire burn in the basement. Darius spun around to face me. The bravado was gone. The influencer persona had evaporated. All that was left was a terrified child who realized the safety net was not just gone, but had been replaced by concrete. "Dad," Darius whispered. "Dad, tell them. Tell them it's a mistake. Tell them I have permission." I looked at him. I looked at the boy who had texted me asking for $5,000 while mocking me to his friends. I looked at the man who had stolen from me not because he was hungry, but because he was bored. I didn't say anything. The officer stepped forward. He took Darius's wrist. He spun him around. "You have the right to remain silent," the sergeant recited. The first handcuff clicked. "No," Darius shouted. He struggled, trying to pull his arm away. "Dad, stop them. This isn't funny. Stop the prank. It is not a prank." "Darius," I said. Darius looked at me over his shoulder, his eyes wide with panic. "Dad, Please. I'm your son. I'm your baby boy. You can't let them take me to jail. It's Christmas. The second handcuff clicked. I'm sorry, Officer Darius blubbered, tears streaming down his face now. My dad, he's old. He forgets things. He didn't mean to file charges. He'll drop them. Right, Dad? You'll drop them. The officer looked at me. He paused. He needed confirmation. He needed the accuser to stand firm. Mr. King, the officer asked, do you wish to proceed with the charges? The room seemed to shrink. Naya was watching from the floor, her hand over her mouth. Cohen was watching. The security guards were watching. I looked at Darius. He was trembling. He dropped to his knees, dragging the officer down slightly with him. He shuffled forward on his knees, moving toward me across the marble floor. Daddy, please. Darius sobbed. He wrapped his arms around my legs. He buried his face in the fabric of my trousers. I'm sorry. I swear I'm sorry. I was just joking. The live stream was a joke. The text was a joke. I love you, Dad. I love you so much. Don't send me to jail. I won't survive in there. I felt his tears soaking into the wool of my suit pants. I felt his body shaking against my legs. I remembered when he was 5 years old. He had woken up from a nightmare and run into my room. I had let him sleep in the bed between me and Beatrice. I had held him until he stopped shaking. I had promised him I would always keep the monsters away, but I had failed. I hadn't kept the monsters away. I had fed the monster until it lived inside him. I looked down at the top of his head. If I saved him now, he would never learn. If I made the police go away, he would steal again next week. If I let him get up, he would never become a man. He would stay a parasite until the day I died, and then he would consume whatever was left until there was nothing. Love is not saving people from consequences. Love is letting them face the gravity of their own choices. I reached down. Darius looked up, hope flooding his eyes. He thought I was reaching to hug him. He thought I was reaching to pull him up and tell the officers to leave. I placed my hand on his shoulder. Then I pushed him away. I stepped back, breaking his hold on my legs. I shook my pant legs, smoothing the fabric, dusting off the invisible specks of his desperation. Mr. King, the officer asked again. I looked the officer in the eye. My son is not a thief, I said clearly. My voice was steady, but inside my heart was breaking into shrapnel. Darius let out a gasp of relief. See, he cried. I told you he didn't mean it. But the man kneeling on my floor, I continued, my voice hardening into steel. The man who stole my credit cards. The man who forged my signature. The man who mocked me to the world. That man is a stranger. Darius froze. His smile died. I proceeded with the charges. I said to the officer, take him away. No, Darius screamed. It was a raw animal sound. Dad, you can't do this. I'm your blood. The officers hauled him up. He went limp, dead weight, sobbing uncontrollably. They dragged him toward the door. I'm sorry, Mr. King, the sergeant said, tipping his cap to me. They pulled Darius out into the snow. He was screaming for his mother now. He was screaming for Beatrice. Mom would never let you do this, he wailed as they shoved him into the back of the squad car. She would hate you. I flinched. That one hit the mark. I watched through the open door. I watched them slam the car door shut, cutting off his screams. I watched the lights flash against the snow. I watched the car put into gear and drive away, taking my youngest child to a cell in the county lockup. I stood there in the doorway, the cold wind biting my face. Maybe Beatrice would hate me, I whispered to the empty air, but she isn't here to see what you became. I closed the door. I turned back to the room. It was just me, Cohen, the guards, and Nia. Nia was silent. She had stopped crying. She was staring at me with a look of absolute terror. She had just watched me send her baby brother to prison. She realized finally that there was no bottom to this. She realized that I was capable of anything. I walked past her. I didn't look at her. I walked to the silver tray and picked up my teacup. The tea was cold now. I drank it anyway. I am the architect, I thought, and sometimes you have to tear the house down to the studs to get the rot out. I set the cup down. I looked at the clock. It was 9:45 a.m. The day was just beginning, and I had one more secret to reveal, one final nail in the coffin of their entitlement. I turned to Nia. Get up, I said. She scrambled to her feet, hugging herself. There is something else you need to know, I said. Something your brothers didn't stick around to hear. I walked toward the library. Follow me. Nia followed me into the library. She walked with her arms wrapped around herself, shivering though the house was warm. She looked small. She looked like a child who had wandered into a cathedral and realized she was too loud, too dirty, and too small for the space. I walked to the heavy mahogany desk. It was the only piece of furniture in the room that I hadn't built myself. It was an antique, a gift from a sheikh in the Emirates after I solved a structural resonance issue that was threatening to tear his favorite tower apart in the high desert winds. I sat down. I didn't offer her a chair. She stood on the other side of the desk looking at the walls. For the first time in her life, she actually looked at what was hanging there. Growing up, she had ignored this room. It was boring. It was full of dad stuff. Dusty papers, framed diagrams that looked like geometry homework. She had never asked what they were. She had never asked why the blueprints were framed in museum-quality glass. "Look at the wall, Nia," I said. She blinked, wiping a smudge of mascara from her cheek. "What?" "Look at the wall behind me," I repeated. "Tell me what you see." She squinted. She looked at the row of patents framed in black wood. There were 12 of them. "They look like certificates," she whispered. "They are patents," I said. "United States patent numbers 678499021 and 4452, among others." I swiveled my chair slightly. "Do you know what a seismic base isolation system is, Nia?" She shook her head, mute. "It is the reason the Burj Khalifa doesn't snap in half when the wind hits it at 60 miles an hour, I said. "It is the reason the new Freedom Tower in New York sits on a foundation that can withstand a truck bomb. It is a technology that allows man to build castles in the clouds." I pointed to the center frame. "I invented it," I said. Nia's eyes widened. You built those." "I designed the physics that keeps them standing," I corrected. "I am a structural engineer, Nia, but I am not just a guy who pours concrete. I am the guy they call when the architects draw something impossible and need someone to make it real." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the leather desk pad. "Every time a skyscraper goes up in Dubai, I get paid. Every time a foundation is laid in Shanghai using my dampening system, I get paid. Every time a bridge is retrofitted in San Francisco to survive an earthquake, I get paid." I opened a drawer and pulled out a portfolio. It wasn't red like the debt folder. It was black leather, soft and smelling of money. I opened it. Inside was a balance sheet, a consolidated statement of net worth. I slid it across the desk toward her. "Read the number at the bottom," I said. Nia picked it up. Her hands were trembling so violently the paper made a rattling sound against the wood. She looked at the number. She blinked. She looked again. She mouthed the digits, unable to speak them aloud. 9 figures. That's not possible," she choked out. You drive a Ford truck. You wear work boots. You clip coupons for coffee." "I drove a truck because it hauled lumber," I said. "I wore boots because I worked. And I clipped coupons because I know the value of $1. Unlike you." I took the paper back. "You called me a stingy old man," I said. "Tiffany called me a poor black man. Marcus thought I was a senile retiree living on a pension." I laughed. It was a dry sound like paper tearing. "I am not retired, Nia. I am silent. There is a difference." Nia looked around the room as if the walls were shifting. The dusty library wasn't a relic anymore. It was a command center. The old man wasn't a burden. He was a titan. "And we didn't know," she whispered. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because I wanted to see who you were without the money," I said. "And I saw. I saw exactly who you were." I stood up and walked to the window. The snow had stopped. The sun was breaking through the clouds, illuminating the white lawn. The for sale sign I had ordered hadn't arrived yet, but it didn't matter. The deal was already done. I looked out at the street. I saw the tire tracks where Tiffany's taxi had sped away. I saw the empty space where the police car had taken Darius. "You all hate this house," I said softly. "You told me that in the text. Drafty, smelly, ugly. You wanted me to sell it so you could get your cut. You thought it was worth, 500,000, maybe 6 for the lot." Nia nodded dumbly. Marcus said the land was valuable for condos." "Condos," I scoffed. "Marcus thinks small. He always has. That's why he was a mediocre CEO." I turned back to her. "Do you know what lies 300 feet beneath this house, Nia?" She shook her head. "Bedrock," I said. "Solid granite bedrock." the hardest stone in Chicago. And do you know what sits directly adjacent to our property line? No, she whispered. The main fiber optic trunk line for the Midwest Data Corridor, I said. I walked back to the desk and picked up a contract. It was thick, bound in blue plastic. Google doesn't want to build condos, Nia, I said. They want to build a server farm, a data center. They need bedrock to minimize vibration. They need fiber optics for speed. And they need a contiguous 4-acre lot in the city limits. I tapped the contract. I spent 40 years buying the lots next door, the abandoned bakery, the old gas station. I bought them all under shell companies. I assembled the parcel, and this house, this drafty, ugly house, it is the keystone. Without this lot, they can't build. Nia was staring at the blue folder. Her breathing was shallow. How much, she whispered. The greed was cutting through her grief. Even now, broke and humiliated, the smell of money woke her up. I sold it this morning, I said. At 7:00 a.m., while you were banging on my door. How much, Daddy? $50 million, I said. Nia made a sound like she had been punched in the gut. She grabbed the edge of the desk to keep from falling. 50 million, she squeaked. Cash, I said. Closing in 30 days. They are going to bulldoze this house. They are going to tear it down to the dirt, and I am going to let them. Nia's face contorted. A mix of horror and sudden desperate hope. 50 million, she repeated. Daddy, we're rich. We're safe. You can fix everything. You can pay off the loans. You can bail out Marcus. You can get Darius a lawyer. We can start over. She looked at me, her eyes shining. She thought she had won the lottery. She thought the nightmare was over. She thought that because the number was so big, it had to include her. I looked at her. I looked at the daughter who had sent me a text message demanding 40% of a house she thought was worthless just to keep her failing business alive. I sat back down. I picked up my pen. I am rich, Nia, I corrected her. You are bankrupt. The light died in her eyes. What, she whispered. The proceeds from the sale have already been allocated, I said. Allocated, she asked. To who? To us. To the trust. The trust is dissolved, I reminded her. The money is going into a new foundation. The Beatrice King Foundation. Mom, she asked. Yes, I said. It will fund trade schools for underprivileged youth. It will provide scholarships for engineers who actually want to work. It will build housing for the homeless. I leaned forward. It will not pay for your boutique. It will not pay for Marcus's legal defense. It will not pay for Darius's bail. But we are your children, Nia screamed. You can't give $50 million to strangers and leave us with nothing. I can, I said. And I did. The papers are signed. Nia stared at me. The realization was total. It wasn't just a punishment. It was an exile. She wasn't just cut off from the allowance, she was cut off from the dynasty. And Tiffany? I asked, twisting the knife just a little bit more. Does she know? Nia shook her head, tears streaming down her face again. Imagine her face, Nia, I said softly. Imagine when you tell her. Imagine when she realizes that she called a billionaire a poor old man. Imagine when she realizes that the house she spat on was worth more than her entire life's earnings combined. Nia sobbed. She covered her face with her hands. You are cruel, she wept. You are so cruel. I am thorough, I said. I looked at the clock. It was 10:00 a.m. You have to go, Nia, I said. The new owners are sending a surveyor at noon. I need the house empty. She looked up at me. Her makeup was ruined. Her spirit was broken. Where do I go? She whispered. I don't know, I said. But you have a master's degree in business. I suggest you go find a job. I turned my chair away from her. I looked at the patents on the wall, the diagrams of stress and tension, the math of survival. I heard her walk to the door. I heard her stop. Daddy, she said. I didn't turn around. Goodbye, Nia. She left. I heard the front door close. I was alone in the library, just me and the $50 million worth of paper on my desk. I reached for the phone. I dialed Cohen. They are gone, I said. Good, Cohen replied. Are you okay, Reggie? I looked at the empty room. I looked at the snow outside. I am tired, Cohen, I said. But the demolition is complete. The site is cleared. Now, I said, taking a deep breath. Now we can start building something real. I walked back into the foyer, leaving the library and the millions of dollars in patents behind me. The silence in the hallway was heavy, pressurized like the air before a tornado touches down. Marcus was still there. He hadn't left. He was standing near the door, hugging his elbows, shivering in his suit jacket. He looked small. He looked like a man who was waiting for a punchline that would never come. I looked at my watch. It was a heavy gold timepiece Beatrice had given me for our 30th anniversary. "You have 5 minutes," I announced. My voice was flat, devoid of the fatherly warmth they had exploited for decades. "In 5 minutes, this property will be sealed. Anyone remaining inside will be removed by force." Marcus looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed with the exhaustion of a hangover and the shock of a lifetime. He took a step toward me. He didn't look like the CEO of MK Capital anymore. He looked like a child who had broken a window and was waiting to see if he could talk his way out of a spanking. "Dad, wait," Marcus pleaded, his voice cracking. "We can't just leave. It is 10 degrees outside. We don't have coats. We don't have phones. You took the cars. You took everything." "You have feet," Marcus, I said. "Use them. Walk to the train station. It is 2 miles that way. It will build character." He shook his head, a frantic, jerky motion. "No, Dad, please. Listen to yourself. This isn't you. You aren't this cruel. You are the guy who builds bridges. Remember? You fix things." "I fixed the glitch, Marcus," I said. "You were the glitch." He reached out his hand, trembling, trying to grab my sleeve. I stepped back. I didn't want his touch. It felt contagious. "Dad, stop," Marcus shouted, desperation making him bold. "Think about what you are doing. Think about the family. Think about Mom." The air in the room froze. "Do not," I whispered. The warning was low, a rumble deep in my chest. "Do not speak her name." Marcus didn't listen. He thought he had found the key. He thought he had found the emotional lever that would pry open the vault of my mercy. He pressed harder. "Mom would never want this." Marcus yelled, tears streaming down his face now. "She loved us. She wanted us to be together. She would be heartbroken if she saw you throwing her children out into the snow like garbage. She would hate you for this, Dad. She would hate you." That was it. The dam broke. The structural integrity of my patience, which had held for 5 years of grief and silence, finally shattered. I didn't yell. I roared. I slammed my hand down on the foyer table. The silver tray jumped. The teacup rattled against the saucer. The sound was like a gunshot in the enclosed space. Enough, I advanced on him. For the first time in 40 years, Marcus flinched away from me in genuine fear. I wasn't an old man with a bad knee anymore. I was a force of nature. I was the storm. "Do not tell me what your mother would want," I screamed, my voice raw with a pain I had buried under layers of concrete. "You don't get to speak for her. You lost that right when you let her die alone." Marcus stumbled back, hitting the wall. "Dad, she called for you," I shouted, pointing a finger in his face. My hand was shaking, not with age, but with rage. She lay in that hospice bed for 3 days, gasping for air, asking where her beautiful boy was. And where were you? "Marcus, were you working? Were you saving the world?" I stepped closer. He shrank down, sliding against the wallpaper. "No," I answered for him. "You were in Cabo. You were drinking tequila and buying watches. I called you 3 times. You sent me to voicemail. You let your mother take her last breath, holding the hand of a nurse because you were too busy spending my money to come say goodbye." I loomed over him. The memory of that night, the sound of the heart monitor flatlining, the coldness of her hand in mine, it all came rushing back, fueling the fire. "She died waiting for you," I roared. "She died with a broken heart because she knew Marcus. She knew you didn't care. She knew you loved the lifestyle more than you loved her." Marcus was sobbing now, sliding down the wall to the floor, covering his head with his hands. "And you dare stand in her house eating her food and tell me what she would want?" I spat. "She would want you to be a man. She would want you to stand on your own 2 feet. But you can't. You are a parasite." I turned to the security guards. I was done. The fire was raging and I wanted the building cleared. "Get them out," I commanded. Now, Mr. Henderson didn't hesitate. He signaled to his team. They moved like a machine. 2 guards grabbed Marcus. They didn't ask him to stand. They reached down, grabbed him by the lapels of his $3,000 suit, and hauled him up like a sack of wet cement. No, Marcus screamed, kicking his legs. "Dad, I'm sorry. I'm sorry." They dragged him toward the door. His expensive Italian loafers scuffed against the marble, leaving black streaks. He reached out for me, his fingers clawing at the air. "Dad, don't do this." I turned my back on him. By the door, Tiffany had tried to sneak back in during the chaos. She had been listening. She thought maybe there was an opening. A guard blocked her path. She started screaming a high, piercing shriek of entitlement. "Get your hands off me. Do you know who I am? My husband is the CEO. I will have your badge. I will have your job." The guard didn't even blink. He grabbed her arm. Not gently. He grabbed her with the grip of a man removing a trespasser. He spun her around. "You are nobody, ma'am," the guard said. He marched her out. She dug her heels into the porch steps, fighting, cursing, spitting. She called me every name in the book. She called me a tyrant. She called me a devil. I watched through the open door as they threw Marcus out onto the snowy driveway. He landed hard on his hands and knees. The snow soaked instantly into his suit pants. He looked up, snow on his face, gasping for air. The guard shoved Tiffany out next to him. She stumbled, slipping on the ice, and went down in a heap of white fur. She scrambled up, her face twisted in ugly primal rage. "I hope you rot," she screamed at the house. "I hope you die in there alone." Naya was the last. She walked out on her own, flanked by a guard. She didn't look at me. She didn't scream. She just looked at her brother and sister-in-law rolling in the snow, and she kept walking. She walked past them down the driveway toward the street. She didn't look back. She knew. The kingdom had fallen. Mr. Henderson stepped back inside. He looked at me. "House is clear, Mr. King," he said. "Close it," I said. He grabbed the heavy brass handle. He pulled the oak door shut. The slam echoed through the house. It was a final, definitive sound. The click of the deadbolt sliding home was the period at the end of a very long, very painful sentence. I stood in the foyer. My chest was heaving. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I felt lightheaded. Cohen walked over to me. He didn't say anything. He just handed me a glass of water. I took it. I drank it in one gulp. I looked at the closed door. I couldn't hear them anymore. The wind outside was howling, drowning out their screams, burying their footprints. I walked over to the side table. I picked up the silver tray with the teacup. I walked into the kitchen and put it in the sink. I washed the cup. I dried it. I put it back in the cupboard. Then I walked to the living room window. I pulled back the curtain just an inch. I saw them. Marcus was helping Tiffany stand up. They were arguing. He was pointing at the street. She was pointing at the house. They were shivering, cold, broke, and homeless. They looked like strangers. I let the curtain fall back into place. "Beatrice," I whispered to the empty room. "I did it. I finally did it." I walked over to the fireplace. The embers of the photos were cold now, just gray ash. I sat down in my armchair. I closed my eyes. For the first time in 5 years, the house didn't feel haunted. It felt quiet. It felt ours again. I was alone, and it was the most peaceful feeling in the world. 7 days. That is how long it takes for a dynasty built on delusion to crumble into dust. It does not take years. It does not take months. When you pull the pin on the grenade, the explosion is instant, but the shockwave takes a week to flatten everything in its path. I sat in my library. The room was quiet. The snow outside had turned to gray slush, the ugly aftermath of a storm. On my desk there were no patents, no blueprints, and no family photos. There was only a single, thick manila envelope. It had arrived by courier an hour ago from the private investigator Cohen had retained to monitor the fallout. I didn't need to guess what was happening. I didn't need to wonder. I had paid for a front-row seat to the demolition. I opened the file. The first photograph was grainy, taken with a long-range lens. It showed Marcus. My son was standing on the sidewalk outside a glass skyscraper in the Loop. He was wearing the same suit he had been wearing on Christmas morning, but now it was wrinkled, stained with salt and sweat. He was holding a cardboard box. He looked like he had aged 10 years in a week. I read the report attached to the photo. Marcus had spent the last 5 days trying to leverage his resume. He walked into every investment firm, every hedge fund, and every boutique equity shop in Chicago. He thought his name still opened doors. He thought Marcus King, the CEO, meant something. He found out the hard way that in the world of high finance, reputation is a currency more valuable than gold, and his account was overdrawn. He had a meeting on Tuesday with a former college roommate who ran a mid-sized fund. The report said the meeting lasted 4 minutes. The roommate didn't offer him a job. He didn't even offer him a coffee. He told Marcus that his name was radioactive. The blacklist I had initiated was not a physical list. It was a whisper. It was a phone call from Cohen to the heads of the major firms reminding them that Kingston Holdings did not look favorably upon anyone who hired an embezzler. And since Kingston Holdings owned significant stakes in the buildings where these firms operated, the message was received loud and clear. Marcus was unhirable. He wasn't just unemployed, he was exiled. But the professional death wasn't the blow that broke him. I turned the page. There was a photo of Marcus sitting in a coffee shop, his head in his hands. Standing over him was a process server. Tiffany didn't wait. She didn't mourn the marriage. She didn't try to work it out. She operated with the cold efficiency of a parasite looking for a new host. She filed for divorce 48 hours after I kicked them out. The grounds were irreconcilable differences, which is legal. Speak for, he ran out of money. The report detailed her petition. She was asking for spousal support based on his previous income, unaware that his previous income was zero and his assets were frozen. She was asking for full custody of the dogs. She was washing her hands of him before the ink on his termination letter was dry. I looked at the picture of my son staring at the divorce papers. He looked lost. He looked like a man who had woken up in a foreign country where he didn't speak the language. He had built his entire identity on being a provider, a big shot, a king. Now he was just a guy with a suitcase and a lawsuit. I felt a twinge in my chest. It wasn't regret, it was pity. Pity for the boy who thought a gold digger loved him for his heart. I turned the page. Nia. The photo was taken through a store window. It wasn't Luxe Noir. It wasn't a boutique on the Magnificent Mile. It was a discount grocery store on the south side. Nia was wearing a red vest over a white polo shirt. She had a name tag that was crooked. She was standing behind a register scanning cans of soup. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She wasn't wearing makeup. The report said she had applied to 20 fashion houses. They all turned her down. Word travels fast. Everyone knew she had defaulted on $1 million loan. Everyone knew her flagship store had been seized. In the fashion world, failure is contagious and nobody wanted to catch what she had. She had bills to pay. She had to eat. So the girl who used to fly to Paris for the weekend was now asking customers if they had coupons. I read the investigator's notes. Subject living in a studio apartment in Bronzeville. Rent $800 a month. 4th floor walk-up. No doorman, no view. She was living the life I lived when I was her age. She was taking the bus. She was counting her change to buy lunch. I looked closer at the photo. She wasn't smiling. She looked exhausted. She looked angry. But she was standing on her own 2 feet. She was working. It was a hard job. It was a thankless job. But for the first time in her life, she was earning $1 that I hadn't given her. I felt a flicker of something that wasn't quite pride, but it was close. It was respect for the struggle. She hadn't curled up and died. She was surviving. It was a brutal lesson, but she was learning it. I flipped to the final section. Darius. There were no photos of Darius. Cameras aren't allowed inside the visitation area of the Cook County Jail. There was only a log of his phone calls. Outgoing calls 42. Calls accepted 0. He had called Marcus. Marcus didn't answer because Marcus was busy losing his wife. He had called Nia. Nia didn't answer because she was busy scanning vegetables. He had called his friends, the ones who drank his vodka in Aspen. They didn't answer because the party was over. And he had called me. 12 times. I hadn't answered. The report summarized his status. Arraignment set for next Tuesday. Bail denied due to flight risk and lack of fixed address. He was currently housed in the general population. My baby boy. The one who needed a nightlight until he was 10. He was sleeping on a steel cot with a thin wool blanket. He was eating slop on a tray. He was surrounded by men who didn't care about his Instagram followers. The investigator noted that Darius had stopped screaming after the 3rd day. He had stopped threatening the guards. He had gone quiet. Silence. That was what he needed. He needed to sit in the silence and hear his own thoughts without the noise of his ego drowning them out. He needed to realize that actions have consequences that Daddy cannot write a check to fix. I closed the file. I sat there in the dim light of the library. The house was so quiet I could hear the wind rattling the window panes. A week ago, I would have looked at these reports and wept. I would have felt guilty. I would have picked up the phone and called Cohen to fix it. I would have paid the bail. I would have bought the condo. I would have hired the lawyer. But tonight, I felt nothing but a cold, hard clarity. I was not happy. There is no joy in seeing your children suffer. There is no victory in watching your son lose his marriage or your daughter lose her dream. It is a tragedy. A tragedy of my own making, perhaps, but a tragedy nonetheless. But it was fair. For 40 years I had tipped the scales in their favor. I had put my thumb on the balance of their lives, shielding them from the weight of the world. I had created an artificial gravity where they could float without effort. Now I had simply stepped away. I had let gravity take hold. They were falling. And the ground was hard. I stood up and walked to the bookshelf. I pulled down a bottle of whiskey. It wasn't the expensive stuff Marcus liked. It was a simple, honest bourbon. I poured 2 fingers into a glass. I walked to the window and looked out at the city skyline. I could see the lights of the skyscrapers I had helped build. I knew the stress loads of those buildings. I knew the tension ratings of the steel. I knew that if you built a foundation poorly, the whole thing would eventually come down. I had demolished the family to save the children. It was the hardest job of my life. My phone buzzed on the desk. I walked over and looked at it. It was a text from Cohen. All assets secured. Transfer to the foundation complete. The house closing is scheduled for the 30th. Are you ready to move? I looked around the room. The books, the desk, the ghosts of Christmas past. I typed back. I have been ready for 5 years. I took a sip of the bourbon. It burned on the way down a clean, purifying fire. I wasn't a father anymore. Not in the way they wanted me to be. I wasn't a bank. I wasn't a safety net. I was just a man who had done his work. I turned off the lamp. The room plunged into darkness. Justice is not sweet, I thought as I walked out of the library for the last time. Justice is just necessary. And the bill had finally been paid in full. The winter in Chicago does not end when the Christmas lights come down. It lingers. It hangs on through January and February, turning the city into a gray landscape of slush and biting wind. 6 weeks had passed since I evicted my biological children from my life. 6 weeks of silence in the house. 6 weeks of sleeping through the night without a single text message asking for money. People thought I was alone. My neighbors looked at me with pity when I walked to the corner store. They saw an old man shuffling through the snow coat buttoned to his chin, carrying a reusable grocery bag. They whispered that it was a shame how his family had abandoned him. They didn't know that I had done the abandoning. And they certainly didn't know that I was not lonely. I had work to do. I stood in the back of a renovated warehouse on 47th Street. The air smelled of sawdust, welding flux, and hydraulic oil. It was the smell of progress. Above the entrance, a fresh sign was being painted. The Southside Youth Trade Initiative. It wasn't a bank, it wasn't a hedge fund, it was a school. A place where young men and women from the neighborhood came to learn how to bend steel, how to wire a breaker box, and how to pour a foundation that wouldn't crack. I watched from the shadows near the tool crib. I liked to watch. It was the only way to see the truth. When people know the boss is watching, they perform. When they think nobody is watching, they reveal their character. In the center of the room, a young man was struggling with a heavy crate of copper piping. He was tall, lanky, with skin the color of deep mahogany and eyes that held a tired, ancient wisdom. He was wearing a faded blue work shirt with a name patch that read Jamal. Jamal was 20 years old. He worked 2 shifts, one here as a janitor and inventory clerk, and another at the grocery store down the block where I shopped. For 2 years, Jamal had carried my bags to my car. He had seen me counting coupons at the register. He had seen me limping on my bad days. He never sighed. He never rolled his eyes. He never asked for a tip, though I always tried to press a $5 bill into his hand. "No, Mr. Reggie," he would say, pushing the money back. "You keep that. You need it more than I do. Buy yourself some good coffee." He thought I was poor. He thought I was a retiree living on a fixed income, counting pennies to survive. And because he thought I was poor, he treated me with a kindness that was pure. It wasn't transactional. It wasn't an investment strategy. It was just respect for an elder. I watched him now. The crate was too heavy for one man. He grunted, his muscles straining. Another kid, a younger boy who was new to the program, walked by, texting on his phone, ignoring the struggle. Jamal didn't yell at him. He didn't complain. He just set his jaw, adjusted his grip, and heaved the crate onto the shelf. He wiped the sweat from his forehead with the back of his sleeve. That was the difference. Marcus would have hired someone to move it. Nia would have complained that the crate was ugly. Darius would have filmed himself pretending to lift it. Jamal just moved the damn crate. I walked out of the shadows. My cane tapped against the concrete floor. Jamal looked up. His face broke into a genuine grin. "Mr. Reggie," he called out, wiping his hands on a rag. "What are you doing down here? You shouldn't be walking on that concrete with your knee acting up. It's cold in here." "I am fine, Jamal," I said. "I was just looking for the owner." Jamal laughed. He shook his head. "Good luck with that." I've been working here 6 months and I never seen the big boss. They say he is some corporate suit downtown. We just deal with the foreman. I walked closer to him. I looked at his boots. They were worn out, held together with duct tape at the toe. I looked at his hands. Calloused. Scarred. Why do you work so hard, Jamal? I asked. You are here every day. You are at the grocery store every night. When do you sleep? Jamal shrugged. Sleep is for the rich, Mr. Reggie. I got a little sister at home. My mama passed last year. Rent don't pay itself. You want to do this forever? I asked, gesturing to the broom in the corner. Sweep floors. Jamal's eyes flashed. A spark of ambition he usually kept hidden. Nah, he said quietly. I want to build. I look at the blueprints the electricians leave out. I understand them, Mr. Reggie. I see how the circuits run. I see how the load bears. I want to be a structural engineer, like the guys who built the Sears Tower. He looked down, embarrassed by his own dream. But college costs money, and I got rent to pay. So I sweep. It's honest work. I felt a lump in my throat. Here was a boy with nothing dreaming of building skyscrapers, and I had a son with everything who only knew how to tear them down. I reached into my pocket. I didn't pull out coupons. I pulled out a key card. It was a black card, heavy and magnetic. Come with me, Jamal, I said. He looked confused. Where are we going, Mr. Reggie? My shift isn't over. The foreman will write me up. The foreman works for me, I said. Jamal blinked. What, follow me? I walked toward the heavy steel door at the back of the warehouse. It was marked authorized personnel only. Management. Jamal hesitated, then followed. He looked nervous. He probably thought I was having a senile episode and wandering where I shouldn't be. I tapped the card against the reader. The light turned green. The lock buzzed. I pushed the door open. Inside, it wasn't a utility closet. It was a state-of-the-art office. Glass walls, leather chairs, an architectural model of the city skyline in the center of the room, and on the far wall, a massive portrait of a beautiful black woman with kind eyes, Beatrice. Jamal stepped inside, looking around in awe. Whose office is this? He whispered. Mine, I said. I walked behind the desk and sat down. For the first time in 2 years, I didn't look like the old man from the grocery store. I sat up straight. I placed my hands on the desk. Jamal stared at me. He looked at my face, then at the nameplate on the desk. Reginald King, chairman. Mr. Reggie, he asked, his voice trembling. You own this place. I own the building, Jamal, I said. I own the land it sits on, and I own the company that funds the school, but... You let me carry your bags, he said, his mind reeling. You drive that old Ford. You use coupons. I leaned forward. Because I was looking for something, Jamal. I was looking for something I couldn't find in my own house. I was looking for character. I opened the drawer and pulled out a file. It was a thick legal document. I had spent the last week drafting it with Cohen. My children are gone, Jamal, I said. I didn't tell him the details. I didn't tell him about the eviction or the jail cell. He didn't need to know the ugliness. I have a legacy, I continued. I have built things that will stand for 100 years. But a legacy isn't just steel and concrete. It is people. It is handing the blueprint to someone who knows how to read it. I slid the file across the desk. This is the charter for the Beatrice King Foundation, I said. It is named after my wife. She was the one who taught me that love is an action, not a word. Jamal looked at the file, afraid to touch it. What is it? He asked. It is a full scholarship, I said. Tuition, room and board, books, for the University of Illinois Engineering Program. 4 years, fully paid. Jamal's knees gave out. He grabbed the back of a chair to steady himself. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Tears welled up in his eyes, spilling over onto his cheeks. But that is not all, I said. I stood up and walked around the desk. I stood in front of him. I don't just need a student, Jamal. I need a successor. I put my hand on his shoulder. It felt solid, real. I am 72 years old, I said. I have maybe 10 good years left. I need someone to run this foundation when I am gone. I need someone who knows what it feels like to be hungry. I need someone who won't spend the money on ski trips and sports cars. I need someone who will use it to build. I looked him in the eye. I am offering you a job, Jamal. You go to school. You get your degree. And while you do that, you intern with me. I will teach you everything I know. I will teach you how to read the soil. I will teach you how to negotiate a contract. I will teach you how to be a king. Not by name, I added softly, but by action. Jamal was sobbing openly now. He shook his head, overwhelmed. Mr. Reggie, I don't know what to say. Why me? I'm nobody. I'm just the bag boy. You are the man who carried my groceries when you thought I had nothing to give you, I said. That makes you somebody. That makes you the only person in this city I trust. I held out my hand. Will you help me build this, son? The word hung in the air. Son. I hadn't used it in 6 weeks. It felt different this time. It didn't feel like an obligation. It felt like a choice. Jamal looked at my hand. He looked at the portrait of Beatrice. He wiped his face with his rough, scarred hands. He reached out and gripped my hand. His grip was strong, honest. Yes, sir, he whispered. I won't let you down. I believe you, I said. We stood there for a moment, the old architect and the young apprentice in the quiet office surrounded by the noise of the work floor. I felt a weight lift off my chest, a weight I had been carrying since the funeral. I wasn't leaving my legacy to biology anymore. I was leaving it to merit. Okay, I said, breaking the moment. Dry your eyes. We have work to do. I walked back to the desk and picked up the phone. Quit your job at the grocery store, I said, and throw away those boots. We are going to get you some steel toes. We have a site inspection at noon. Jamal smiled. It was a smile that lit up the room, a smile full of future. Yes, sir, Mr. King. Reggie. I corrected him. To you, I am just Reggie. I watched him walk out of the office, his head held high, his step light. He walked differently now. He walked like a man who had a future. I turned back to the window that overlooked the shop floor. I saw the sparks flying from the welding torches. I saw the dust motes dancing in the light. My biological children were out there somewhere, struggling, learning the hard lessons I should have taught them years ago. Maybe they would make it. Maybe they wouldn't. That was up to them now. But here in the house that Beatrice and I built, the lights were on. I sat down in my chair and pulled out a fresh sheet of drafting paper. I picked up my pencil. I had a new project to design. And for the first time in a long time, the foundation was solid. I sat on the balcony of my apartment in the 16th arrondissement, watching the lights of Paris flicker on against the twilight sky. The air was cool and smelled of rain on limestone. In my hand, I held a glass of water. It was just tap water, but it tasted better than the most expensive champagne I had ever bought for a launch party or a wedding reception. It tasted clean. For 40 years, I defined fatherhood by provision. I measured my love in square footage, in horsepower, and in credit limits. I thought that if I paved the road in front of my children with gold, they would walk somewhere magnificent. I thought that if I removed every stone from their path, they would learn to run faster. I was wrong. I didn't teach them to run. I taught them to be carried. By shielding them from the rain, I ensured they would dissolve in the first storm they faced alone. By giving them everything, I deprived them of the only thing that actually matters, the pride of earning something. I thought about Marcus. He was probably closing up the restaurant right now, mopping the floors, his back aching, his pride in tatters. I didn't feel joy at that image, but I didn't feel guilt either. For the first time, Marcus was learning the physics of the world. He was learning that respect is not a title on a business card. It is the way you treat the person mopping the floor next to you. And now that he was the one holding the mop, maybe he would finally understand the value of the man holding the pen. I thought about Nia. She was living in a world without safety nets. She was counting her tips to pay her electric bill. She was tired. She was scared. But she was alive. She was no longer a mannequin in a window display I had paid for. She was a woman in the arena. If she made it, she would know it was her victory. If she failed, she would know it was her failure. That is a dignity I had stolen from her for decades. I thought about Darius. He was in a cell, or perhaps out on a work release by now, sweating in the sun, his hands blistering. He hated me. I knew that. He cursed my name every night. But he wasn't gambling my money. He wasn't driving drunk in a car he didn't own. He was facing the wall he had built brick by brick. I took a sip of water. People would call me cruel. They would say a father never abandons his children. They would say that blood is thicker than water. But they are wrong. Blood is just biology. Loyalty is a choice. Character is a choice. I had spent a lifetime building bridges for people who only wanted to burn them down to stay warm. I had been an architect of steel and glass, but a failure as an architect of men, until that Christmas Eve. That night, when I burned the photos, when I cut the lines, when I locked the doors, I wasn't destroying my family. I was saving them from the rot that had set into the foundation. It was an amputation. It was brutal. It was bloody. It was necessary. You cannot cure gangrene with a Band-Aid. You have to cut. I looked at the phone on the table. It was silent. No demands, no insults. No fake affection used as currency to buy a new purse. I looked at the photo of Jamal that Cohen had sent me. He was wearing a hard hat, standing on a job site holding a set of blueprints. He wasn't my blood. He didn't have my last name. But he had my spirit. He had the hunger I used to have. He treated the work with reverence. He was the legacy Beatrice deserved. I leaned back in the chair. My knee throbbed a dull, familiar ache. It was going to rain. I welcomed the rain. For years, I had laid awake at night staring at the ceiling of my big empty house in Chicago, worrying if Marcus was happy, worrying if Nia was safe, worrying if Darius was in trouble. The anxiety was a constant hum, a background radiation that poisoned my rest. Tonight the hum was gone. I didn't worry about them anymore. They were adults. They were facing their own lives. They were free from me, and I was free from them. I felt a lightness in my chest that I hadn't felt since I was 20 years old, standing on a construction site with a whole life ahead of me. I wasn't just an old man with money. I was Reggie. I was the architect. And my work was finally done. I finished the water. I stood up and walked inside, closing the balcony doors against the Paris night. I turned off the lights. I climbed into bed. The sheets were cool and crisp. I closed my eyes. There were no ghosts in the room. There were no regrets waiting in the dark. I had loved them enough to let them fall. And for the first time in 40 years, I slept. I slept the deep, untroubled sleep of a man who has balanced the ledger and found peace in the bottom line. True legacy isn't about the millions you leave behind in a bank account. It's about the values you instill while you're still breathing. I spent a lifetime building bridges for my children, only to realize they were using the wood to build their own pedestals while waiting for me to burn. You cannot buy respect, and you certainly cannot inherit character. Sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is cut the safety net and let their children face the gravity of their own choices. A family is built on loyalty, not transactions. Respect is earned, never owed. Did you enjoy this story of justice and redemption? Do you think I was too harsh on my children, or did they get exactly what they deserved? I want to hear your honest opinion in the comments below. Also, let me know which city you are tuning in from. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and consider sending a super thanks to support the channel. It helps me bring you more powerful stories like this one. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new release. There are 2 more life-changing stories on the screen right now. Click one to continue the journey. See you in the next story with love and respect.